Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
In telling the podcast of my father's life, it's impossible to separate fact from fiction, the man from the myth. The best I can do is to tell it the way he told me. It doesn't always make sense, and most of it never happened. But that's what kind of podcast this is.
Eesh, God. Give me that back.
Come on.
Give me that back.
You're not already getting one over?
Crudup is not winning me over in this movie. He's the one who's not winning me over.
I'll say, like, right off the bat, hot takes. Because our guest has been complaining that we've been saying a lot of
that
good
we're spitting
stuff
our hot
pre-episode.
takes off
Am
mic.
I allowed to speak?
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
speak,
of course. Yeah.
We've been here for roughly 25 minutes,
Sure.
and we've discussed so many things about this film.
Right.
Uh-huh.
The last time I was on, we didn't even get to the film.
We
were
barely
discussing
talked
for over
about
an
as
hour.
good as it gets. That's true.
You're right. So you
And
know
now
a
we've
lot of
spent
Star Wars
25
talk.
minutes giving hot takes amongst each other that weren't recorded.
Sure. No, you're very right. So you know
We
what?
need
Let's
to
get
talk Star
focused.
Wars.
Let's
We
get
need to
straight
talk
down to
Star
business.
Wars.
Well, I actually had a
Chris, what did you
question.
think of Solo, a Star Wars
I
story?
thought Solo was solid, and I think that it took a lot of. I think it's
Unfairly maligned, do you think?
unfairly maligned in the sense of, look, if we want this universe to keep expanding, some of these stories aren't going to relate directly to like galactic stakes.
Sure.
If every single installment in the Star Wars world, the actual galaxy is on the line, it's not sustainable. It will
Not
lose
at all.
any sense of effect. So I think it's really smart for them to go, let's take a character you love, do a smaller story that has stakes internal to that character's life outside of the Empire and the Rebellion and all that. I think people were complaining about, the story felt like small. And it's like, well, they're going to have to.
See, I have no complaints on that front.
Right.
My complaint with the movie is I think the movie would work better even more divorced. I think
That's
that
my
story
complaint,
works
too.
better not as a Han Solo story. And you go, here's just a Star Wars story. It's small scale. It's about street rats.
Right.
These are kids in the
Yeah,
slums
the
who are trying to make a
Solo
better
is
life
what's
for
hurting
themselves.
it. Where they're like, but let's explain the Millennium Falcon. I'm like, don't need you to.
Well, I
Don't
was
do it.
thinking about this on the way here. Star Wars, it's funny. I feel like one of the points Big Fish makes is that, and I have so many opinions on this movie because of my background, which I'm sure we'll get into. One of the major things that Big Fish, I think, makes is like, hey, life can be more fun sometimes if you just choose to ask less questions.
Yeah.
Sure. Right.
Star Wars is maybe the ultimate franchise that I was thinking about this year. Because especially the end of Big Fish, when you start to see the reality versions of everything,
Mhm.
I think that's so beautiful. But Star Wars is maybe the ultimate franchise that anytime they've actually tried to double down and explain a character more than
Nightmare.
you already heard about
Not
it,
important.
Yeah.
ruins it. Boba
Totally
Fett was
ruins
our
it.
favorite. They tried kids. I feel like they probably sell 80% less Boba Fett merchandise than they did before the prequels because
Yeah.
he was just that guy with the cool mask.
Right.
Even when they gave him a name, they managed to give him a good name, Boba Fett. But first in Empire, he's just the bounty hunter.
He's just bounty hunter.
Then I was thinking about it too. One of the main Achilles heels, I think, of the original trilogy. Who is the Emperor? Who is that?
Right.
In the original trilogy, there's a guy even worse than Darth Vader, and
Yeah.
they never say a word
I
about
think
him.
it's a little unspoken or a little weird, like that. Like Star Wars has the best villain of all time. It has Darth Vader. He's
Yeah.
so scary.
Yeah.
And then Empire Strikes Back. They're like, this guy's got a boss, and I'm like,
No.
I don't care.
And even Darth Vader.
I don't want him to have a boss.
Yeah.
Even Darth Vader, in the original trilogy, they give him an iconic piece of backstory, but they give him
Sure.
one piece of backstory.
Very simple.
Uh-huh.
I am your father.
Mhm.
That's all the backstory they give that
Yes.
character, and that's at the end of a second entire movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It takes them 2 movies to reveal anything about that guy we already love and think is cool. It would be like trying to explain every gang in the Warriors, you know?
Actually
Right,
explain
right.
them.
It would be
And-
like if
yes.
you made a series, and it's like, and that's another thing.
In the
I-
Warriors, it's like the baseball gang. I get it. They got baseball bats. I get it. That's all I
Yeah.
needed to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The
Right.
roller skate gang, I don't need
Yeah,
to know why
right.
they chose to make their headquarters a subway station bathroom. Perhaps the least desirable place to hang out in all of New York City, a subway station bathroom. Most of which are now just locked permanently.
Actually,
Forever.
side
Yeah.
question that I have either of you ever used a subway station bathroom?
I
Because
think
I never
I
have.
have.
And
in
I
my life.
was
I
born
have.
in
I
this
must have.
city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never done it.
I have. There's in Woodside.
Well, yeah,
when I
that's
lived
crazy
in
'cause-
Woodside, there's one there at the 61st Street
That's
station.
like tolerable.
I used it only for pee in an absolute emergency.
Right.
That is kind of crazy, David, because like me, you were born in New York City and then lived here for the entire duration of your life.
Well, there's this 13-year stretch where I lived in England. just put that out there.
You guys been to the Penn Station bathroom?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That thing is...
Yes.
Giuliani, you forgot. Giuliani forgot. 130 square foot.
He was like,
Port
we
Authority.
can't. Port Authority's even worse.
He just basically said Penn Station and Port Authority are like the New Jersey embassies
Right.
here. And I'm just going to leave them up. Port Authority is...
It
bonkers.
literally
Port
feels
Authority's insane.
like the snowplow machine he used to clean up Times Square. He then led directly into Port Authority.
God.
Well, Port Authority also feels like, say you're the mayor and you sit down with, I don't know, what's like a chic, like Pan Cotidienne, and you're like, whatever you want to have a restaurant in Port Authority, and they're just like, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Like, tax-free, rent-free. You can
Yeah.
have, and it's like, no, we won't
Right.
do it. We won't go in there.
Right.
It'll curse us somehow.
Port Authority
That
is
place
like
is haunted.
only franchises that you're pretty certain went out of business 12 years.
Yeah.
Like Port Authority has like a Circuit City.
And a bowling alley that they remodel every few years
Yes.
to make cool.
Right.
I had my birthday at that bowling alley when I was like 7 years old.
Okay.
And
Only one? Because that's weird because you would have spent the rest of your childhood in New York and you never went back
I
there.
already
for
said that I grew up in England, you twerp.
Chris kind of breezed over it. So I want to.
We used to sneak into this, as Jersey kids do. You used to take the bus into Port Authority,
Mhm.
not tell your parents. And my friend Mike D, older friend of mine, great guy, he was a little bit of a bad kid, so he would sneak in all the time. And he one time was waiting for the last bus back to Jersey, which
Yeah.
if you miss it, you're dead. Like you're a high school kid, you can't. How are
Yeah,
you getting
what
back
would
to New
you
Jersey?
do? Would you like sleep in the Port
I
Authority or
know,
something?
and like
Yeah.
your parents are going to think you're dead. You know. So he's in there.
And this is like a pre-cell phone era, too,
Oh
right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
can't
yeah.
just,
This
like,
is the mid '90s, and he was in there, and he had to take a shit. And he started doing the math, and he's like, "I can't leave Port Authority and
Right.
make it back.
Right.
Like
I'm gonna have to do this. Right.
I have to shit. I'm not making it back to Jersey.
Right.
So he goes into the Port Authority bathroom. This is the last bus. It's probably like 2 a.m. It's mid '90s too. You know, this is like you still saw some streetwalker
Yeah, the
prostitutes.
Jonah Hill era,
Like you
yeah.
still saw. And he goes into the Port Authority bathroom. He's the only one there.
Oh, that's worse.
No,
somehow.
he's like, thank God. thank God."
Okay.
So he goes, he sits down in the stall, he's taking a shit.
Yeah.
And then he hears the door open.
This is why it's worse.
It's just a giant syringe.
He hears all this screaming.
Oh.
Just one person screaming.
Jesus.
So he just tells himself, he goes, Mike, whatever is going on out there, you fucking run.
Right.
Fast.
You're not-
You
this
wipe
is-
up. You're not washing your hands today. It's pre-Purell era, too.
Sure.
You have fucking fecal hands all
That's
the way back
fine.
to Jersey.
To me,
He doesn't
that's
got
like,
options.
yeah,
Yeah.
look, I'm paying whatever debt I have to pay to get out of here.
So
right?
he wipes up, he flushes, and he just takes off running. And he claims that what he passed was a homeless individual removing his own teeth with a pair of pliers.
God. With knives?
Pliers.
Pliers.
Port Authority.
Jeez.
That's Port Authority.
Jeez.
Now, Big Fish is arguably about like the importance of stories in our lives.
Storytelling.
So can I ask
and
you guys?
personal legend?
I
you know?
really wanted to ask you guys this,
Mhm.
and it's been covered on the internet. I looked it up to make sure. But it's something that I've never really read up on. It's bothered me since I was a child.
Okay.
In A New Hope,
Uh-huh.
if we're talking about storytelling,
Yeah, we're getting focused. We're talking about
C-3PO
Star Wars.
so specifically says in A New Hope, sorry, I'm not good at stories. Luke's like, tell me about the rebellion. He's like,
And he's like,
"I'm
I
not
wouldn't.
really-
I
I'm
mean,
not
I'm
programmed for that.
Yeah.
So explicitly.
Right.
Jedi.
He tells the whole story for the Ewoks.
The
with
Ewoks are sitting there with rapt attention like
Right.
this motherfucker is Spalding Gray.
Well, not only that, he is kind of like Spalding Gray. Like he's doing sound effects.
He's holding it down.
Yeah.
He would like win a Lucille Lortel award if that was off Broadway.
Yeah, he would double extension.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And they'll jack the prices,
He'd
too.
have a
After
chance
the
to make
Times
the
review.
jump Berbiglia style.
Yeah,
man.
Berbiglia style, right. 12 weeks.
He's so good at telling stories in Jedi and no justification.
No.
No justification except, no, I'm trying to think, like,
Zero.
I mean, C-3PO isn't really a character who, like, changes. It's not like, he's not, you know, because like in Star Trek, you've got, like, the holographic doctor, and, like, the point of him is that he sort of, like, becomes human. Like, the longer he's on and interacting with people.
Sure.
C-3PO is always basically the same.
Yeah.
He's
That's why
he is
I
what
mean,
he is.
I think Lucas fell into like, I guess we got to do sitcom plots with C-3PO.
Mhm.
Like he's Mr. Bazinga. He's unchanging. The thing that can change are the circumstances around him.
right.
So it's like first movie, he's uppity. Second movie, what's the plot now? He keeps cock blocking.
Yeah, that's it. He's
That
just
is.
an-
Well,
Right,
he keeps
he's-
cock blocking, and then halfway through the movie, his head is blown off.
Right.
And he is
He's
strapped to the
literally
back
fall-
of Chewbacca.
Right.
Right.
But then even you look at the prequels and it's like, what story ideas does he have for C-3PO? C-3PO's head ends up on another robot.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't want C-3PO to grow at all.
Right.
No.
Even
C-3PO's
when-
not going to do shit.
In
Right.
the prequels, when he is like to a fault over explaining how different characters used to be,
Still.
C-3PO is exactly the same. And
Yeah.
they're just like, what's so weird? C-3PO plans 2 dinners at the same restaurant at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like hijinks.
It feels like Lucas straight up, because as you get older and you realize that Star Wars is one of the best things in my life and one of the most informative things in my life. I'm about to have a son. I can't wait. I said it to my wife as soon as we got pregnant. I cannot wait to show my child Star Wars. And I mean all of that.
Yeah.
It's also bad.
Yeah.
Right.
And it maybe always was.
But that's what's great about it.
And it was cool when
Yeah.
he was young.
Yeah.
And in the prequels, he wasn't young enough to be cool anymore. And it just exposed that all of it was bad. It feels like the thought on C-3PO was he straight up watched Hidden Fortress. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, I want something that looks
Right.
like that.
Right.
Tall, skinny guy,
Big-
short,
tall
fat
guy, short guy. Right.
Right. And you're
And
telling
that-
the story
and
from
there's a
low status
princess
characters.
and-
right.
yeah, yeah.
And that image was the extent of the thought behind C-3PO.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I need a skinny guy in the desert
Yeah.
to look like that. And that was the extent.
I like how George Lucas is now like a sandwich
He's
guy
like
from
a-
the Bronx.
Yes, he's a Bronx. Yes.
Hey, give me a skinny guy,
the
all right?
street cart vendor in the Bronx.
You're gonna want to take this this lamb shoulder and put it in the oven 50 minutes.
Do you know this whole thing that like Anthony Daniels hated Kenny Baker,
Sure.
and he would always talk shit about him?
Really?
And when people would be like, "You and Kenny Baker, you're a team," and he's like, "I'm an actor. Kenny Baker is not an actor.
Right. Which is kind of fair because
He's
Kenny
a guy
Baker
operating a robot."
is more of a technician. He's just a guy who's inside of a robot.
But then people would poke Kenny Baker because they were like, "Oh, is this like a
is a
Shatner
thing.
Takai thing where they'll both have shit to say
Right.
each other?"
Yeah.
And Kenny Baker's like, "I got nothing bad to say about the guy."
Well, because look, here's what Kenny Baker knows in his heart. It's like, I don't care how much theater you did on the West End. Put on your fucking gold helmet,
Yeah, right,
asshole. You
right.
sold your soul just like all of us.
100% of people
Yeah.
know you as C-3PO. 0% of people know you as anything else.
And
That's
here's
it.
the point. Literally, post 1980,
Uh-huh.
Anthony Daniels has not had a single acting role that isn't C-3PO.
Right.
And it's like, fine, but don't beat up on poor Kenny Baker.
Right.
Kenny Baker had like a diverse career. Like
Right.
he was in Time Bandits. Like he had other
Yeah.
roles where
He was in
like
this sort of
face visible,
Terry
saying
Gilliam
dialogue.
like ensemble.
He worked.
Yeah.
Like guy had range. And he was just like, "This is a job I'm doing. I operate R2-D2." And people
Sure.
were like, "How nice, you're a comedy team." And Anthony Daniels was like, "That guy's a fucking monkey."
Right. I
Also-
was Macbeth.
Yeah, right.
Just on the basic level, I don't care how much of an asshole Kenny Baker is. You don't talk shit about a little person.
Agreed.
Well, that's
Don't do it.
true.
And Kenny Baker was, by all accounts, not an asshole. Like, even if he was an asshole, you'd be like, "Don't do it, bad optics."
Yeah.
By all accounts,
Yeah.
Kenny Baker, he was just like, "I'm not looking to fight with anybody. I don't know what Anthony Daniels' problem with me is."
Yeah.
And then Anthony Daniels would double down.
I would love, I just have a vision in my head of him like going to the producer, going to fucking Irving Kershner or whoever, being like, "I can't work with Baker anymore. He's this and that." And then Kershner being like, "Cool, I'll get that on record anyway. Why don't you go down to wardrobe and get wrapped up in the tuna can, asshole? So I don't have time in the day for this. I got to fix all of George Lucas's plot holes. Can't be worried about you."
We're in the tundra.
Yeah.
You're right. He wrote this fucking script. We're in an ice planet. Did
Go
you know
get
this?
vacuum sealed, asshole.
We're in a part of Norway where humans can't sustain life. I got to listen to you do this bullshit.
You don't even have to look at Kenny Baker.
Yeah.
He's fully inside the trash can. He's like, the lid is on.
The guy who plays Cliff Clavin's already giving me shit. He's got one line. I got to put up with shit from you too.
Oh, boy. What's
I gotta
my
get-
motivation in this scene? That's what Cliff Clavins is going
I
with.
got to get people to suspend their disbelief about something called a tauntaun so Lucas can sell more goddamn toys.
And especially for that character, you're like, just say Bazinga. The game is clear.
Yeah.
Be prissy.
Be
Be upset.
Kershner, if you ever listen to his commentary of Frem, is amazing because he's just like, when there's a visual effects scene, he's just like, "Yeah, I told him to do all this." And they were like, what do you mean? And I was just, I don't know, just make him fly around. Like, he had no interest in that shit whatsoever.
Meanwhile, Lucas's thing on that has had like literal Smithsonian exhibits about his level of visual, the models and.
But that's
and
why that movie
pre-art.
worked so well. Was like he hired someone to handle like the dramatic integrity of the story and the performances and like shot composition and shit.
Yeah.
And then he was like, you figure out the thing where the thing eats the other thing.
I don't know. It flies into an asteroid. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Griffin.
Ding dong.
Oh, we're ding-donging?
I don't know. Do you have something you want to ask me first?
Well, I just wanted to ask you about Robin Hood, which is a sponsor of the show this week.
Sure, I'm always happy to talk about Robin Hood. I just feel like I should get the door first because someone's pressing that bell.
Yeah, get the door.
Open the door. See, it's probably going to be some wacky character.
Yeah, who is it going to be?
Someone coming in with some crazy game of their own that's really clean and clear.
Mm-hmm.
And just get this door quickly. Craig. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Director Gavin Hood.
Like the director of Sozi?
Yes.
And X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Please, don't list all my credits. It's embarrassing. Ender's Game.
It is embarrassing, in my opinion. Especially as you keep going down that line.
What was that one called?
Rendition?
Yep, that was the one. I forgot it myself.
You had something at Sundance this year, but I didn't check it out.
Yeah, people say it was fine.
Okay.
I think I'm South African.
I think that's right.
Anyway, my ears were burning.
Because I'm going to talk about Robin Hood?
Yeah, and they're my favorite company.
They are?
I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to sit here and enjoy the honor of being able to watch a Robin Hood ad read live.
All right, well, here we go. You ready?
Yeah, because I know their copy is really strict, so I don't want to interrupt at all.
Okay.
And just let you guys give you room to read the copy while I, the director of such films as Eye in the Sky,
Sure.
just sit back and relax and enjoy.
Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free.
Now, while other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all of your profits.
Plus, there is no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level.
The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike.
You can view easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone.
You can also view stock collections, such as 100 most popular.
With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio, discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest.
Now, Robinhood is giving listeners a blank check of free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at check.robinhood.com.
There you go. Gavin liked it.
Bravo, boys. I haven't seen that good a first take since I said print it. After Hugh Jackman looked at his own CGI claws in the bathroom mirror. X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah, that was a movie.
He is immediately walking out of the studio.
Yep, I won't miss him.
I will not either. Talk about the definition of a voiceless journeyman director.
Like I was saying before, the least explained characters are the best Star Wars characters.
Yeah.
Kit Fisto. Listen, I haven't caught up on those cartoons as much as I should.
Sure.
So I don't know. I know they gave some Fisto
I don't
adventures.
think they it's just adventures though, right? They're not telling you like what his deal is.
And
He's just a badass.
The smart thing is, I feel like anytime they answered a question about Fisto, they'd raise 5 new questions.
Good.
So you always felt like you knew less about him.
You can like him more and know that.
Well,
but do you know
he
more?
He
or less?
rarely would speak. Even on the cartoons, they'd be like keep.
He's
strong
kind of a silent but grinning.
Hard to read.
He's often
He's
smiling.
Fun.
He's having fun.
likes it. He likes
But this is why one of my favorite prequel characters is Count Dooku, because he comes in, he's like, "I'm Count Dooku," and you're like, "You're a count."
Huh?
What does that mean? Not explained. And he's got a curvy lightsaber. Not explained. Right? You know, like he's
He's
other
very
character is
old.
like him. He's old as shit. He's
Right.
so old.
Yeah.
And he talks to Yoda like he knows him. You know, like, "Oh, Yoda, we go way back," and none of this is ever
Right, and
explained.
he's like,
Darth
I'm
Maul. Darth Maul is less explained than
He
that.
is-
Darth Maul
yeah,
is Count
totally
Dooku and he
unexplained.
can't even speak.
But the problem with Darth Maul is they keep bringing him back. I mean, the Solo, has
the reveal
him
at the end.
where they're like, more of Darth Maul. And I think it's the same answer. No, he was cool when he was nothing.
You dropped dropped the ball. He gave you one amazing scene. The
Yeah, one
reason
fight
to
scene that
rewatch
was
The Phantom
cool.
Menace is
Right.
that fight scene.
Mhm.
Let's drop it. When
Yeah,
we were
right.
when we were watching that,
reason.
when we watched it in the theater, it was I don't think it was opening day. It might have been opening weekend. And when that came up, you just heard all the nerds gasp. You heard people, oh shit! And
Darth Maul, he's in charge of the gang.
and my wife, with a voice that sounded like she had just finished running a marathon, just goes, "Who is that?" I was like, "Right, this is
This is for
the problem.
5% of people.
This is the problem."
Right.
That being said, oh my God, I can't believe this. At how many days after it opens will you guys be staying in that Star Wars hotel down in Orlando?
We've talked about it.
We
a lot.
have talked.
Have you
Even
talked about
I
it
am
on the-
intrigued.
Yeah?
Because I'm a big theme park person.
Is it in
David
Orlando
is
or
not.
California? I keep
Both.
forgetting.
Both.
It's in both.
Both.
Okay, right.
The Orlando one's going to be better.
It always
yeah.
is, right? Because they have more space.
they
They
have
can
more
just sort of
space.
Right.
Yeah. The city of Orlando's like, pave over that,
I
part
think
of
it's
the town.
supposed
I don't
to
know.
open in May, maybe?
It's that
May
soon?
or June?
They're both opening this year.
I would
Yeah.
like to go not in the summer. I
Is
don't
it
want to go
really-
to Orlando in the summer.
And it's supposed to be like a Sleep No More thing, right? Where like
So there are a couple
you
things.
commit to character when you stay in
They're,
that hotel.
They're going to
Holy
be
shit,
Star Wars
really?
specific hotels.
I've heard that if you stay in those hotels, there's an option where you pay a ton of money. And I don't know if this is a rumor where they'll be like, so do you want to be a Jedi or a smuggler? Do you want to be a spy?
Right.
Sure.
And then they'll like call you in the middle of
What
the
if
night.
I'm like, I want to be in the Trade Federation?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I want to
then they're like,
tax some
and
trade
then they're
routes.
like, "Sir, we have told you that racism is not accepted here in Disney World."
I'm just going by what you're giving me.
You show up in green face and
Yeah.
they're like, sir?
And you're like, "Oh!" And they're like, "Oh God, no."
They are like the fucking, I know there's a Watto presence in the parks.
Sure.
So they're not totally erasing the weird racial stereotypes.
We
Yeah.
all, if it can sell a toy, it's going to show up. At Disney.
Right, and his name's Toydarian. That's a species name. So like there's a short walk there. The thing I've heard is,
That was
that's true.
Chris
Right.
is a little flabbergasted.
that threw me for a loop.
That Watto's a Toydarian?
No, that
I'm a Toydarian.
your tone of like, and his name is Toydarian, so it's our short walk.
Species, yeah.
But I want to go like,
Yeah.
I think my son will have been recently born, and I think I want to go and abandon him for a day or two to go live in that world.
So I have a friend who's a theme park fanatic.
Yeah.
I went to Disney World with him last October. He keeps on nudging me, being like, when are we going to make Star Wars plans? And I'm like, I don't know if I can go within the first 18 months of the thing opening because it's going to be a nightmare.
Insane.
Like they're trying to prepare themselves as much as possible to prevent like Black Friday style death by stampede.
Right.
Like everyone's terrified that there's actually going to be like overpopulation, people getting trampled to death
Right.
issues.
Right.
On the other hand, I'm already kind of sniffing around being like, is there some way I can get someone to like get me to cover this?
You mean like get like a press visit or something?
Yeah, like can I sell someone on like a piece or something,
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that I
I
would
see.
do. Otherwise, I feel like I have to wait like 2 years.
You know me well enough to know that if there is a stampede,
You want to be there.
I want to be an eyewitness.
Yes.
I want to be
Right.
running. I want to be fleeing for my life with
Yes.
genuine fear in my heart.
Right.
Yeah.
As people around me are trampled to death, and it's like, oh no, I'm holding a fake lightsaber and I just watched someone die. Oh no, no, no.
Yeah.
I want to be the witness to that story.
Because the Avatar theme park at opening,
I heard it's amazing.
it rules, but it was that thing where like everyone gets to the gates of Animal Kingdom, the least popular theme park, an hour before it opens.
For a franchise that's not 100th as beloved.
Right. And the Avatar stuff is all the way in the back of Animal Kingdom. And everyone's waiting outside the gates for an hour so that the second the gates open, they can like run to get in line for the Avatar ride.
Right.
Because very quickly that ride becomes a 6-hour wait or
Right.
something. And like the Star Wars thing is going to be that times a billion because everyone loves it. The thing I've heard is that like the big ride's this Millennium Falcon ride,
Yeah.
but it's like a 6-person ride where everyone takes a different position on the Millennium Falcon.
Oh,
it's like
that's
actually an interactive thing where
That
like
sounds
Where
pretty
you can
cool.
be in one of the.
in the gun chair.
Someone's the gunner,
if you're not in
someone's
one of
like-
the gun chairs. How
You fucked
how
up.
pissed are you if you're Chewbacca?
So
if you're the co-pilot.
that's their battle is trying to make each seat
Cool.
have its own advantages.
Good luck.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're the one who gets to sit there and play hollow chess, asshole.
But then here's the thing that's going to blow your guys' mind, okay? So the ride's actually interactive. You're actually affecting the outcome, right? You're making decisions.
Ben, fix these fucking lights. They're driving me crazy. Sorry, keep going.
It's not just like a Bandersnatch thing where you activate like one of 10 possible options. Like anything can happen, I think, right?
Okay. Right. Literally anything.
But then you go on
Just for the listener, Ben, quote, fixed the lights by just turning them off.
Yeah.
It's just 1/3 darker.
Ben took out a hammer and started smashing the light bulbs,
Right.
and now they're fixed. The thing I've heard is that like you go on the Millennium Falcon ride, you do well or this or that, and then they'll like through some weird like Big Brother, Amazon Echo communication system relay to cast members in the park who are playing like walk around Star Wars atmosphere characters, so that if you're at like the cantina after that, some like scumbum will come to me and be like, "Oh, it's you, the guy who took the left." They'll know what you did on the ride.
be
It's
like-
not that thrilling that I took a left. I hope they got something better
No,
than
right,
that.
no,
No, but
couldn't give a good
they might
specific,
come
I
out
don't
to
know
you
the
and go like, "Hey, I heard it was your first time behind a gun and you took out 3 TIE fighters."
Sure.
Right,
That'd
they'll
be
know
cool.
the
And
exact
then I
details
just-
of what you did.
Fucking walk around the park with a boner for the rest of my
Right, like you have
stay.
a reputation at the park.
Oh,
if you
that's
stay
amazing.
at the hotel, that's
Right.
doubled.
And is it
because
true?
apparently
Have you
your
heard-
wake up is someone coming in and being like, "Quick, take this."
But have you heard rumors that you can go into the park in the middle of the night for missions and stuff like that?
I don't know.
That would be.
I know the hotel is like an all night kind of thing.
I tell you what,
Cool.
I was just, my parents spend a big chunk of the year in Florida now because they're snowbirds.
Snowbirds, classic snowbirds.
And we went to not one of the parks. It's like Disney Spring. It's like their outdoor
Yes,
shopping mall
yes,
type thing.
yes.
And they have some attractions, and they had a Star Wars virtual reality
Oh,
thing.
have you done that thing?
I just did it.
It is
Did you do it?
unbelievable. Yes, I did.
Dude, David, do you know about that? I mean, you're walking at one point, you have a virtual reality helmet on, and it's clearly, it must be like a 10-foot square area with
Right.
these hallways that they just have you keep walking around in loops, but you don't feel that.
It's like a black box theater that they're like
Moving
Manipulate.
around.
moving
There's
walls
one
around
point where
you.
you feel like you're walking on like an open air bridge over lava where heat is blasting you from all sides.
Shit.
And then people are shooting at you and you feel their shots hitting the bridge and shaking it. And it's
That
It's
sounds
got
very
like a
cool.
laser tag
Incredible.
thing where you're wearing the vest, and if someone shoots
It
you,
vibrates.
it vibrates
Yeah.
the right amount where
Right.
you're like, I feel the threat of
Where you're
being
like-
hit without being painful.
your instinct isn't like, oh, this game is cool. Your instinct is like, oh shit, I better focus up.
There was a part that blew my mind where like,
Which is how it should be. Like
Yeah.
the
Yes.
VR ones that are just like, isn't this amazing that this exists? Like, okay.
no, this was the first time I was like, I see this as a
As, like, a
sustainable
game,
art
like,
form
that I would wanna
with
play.
validity.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the Void. Any
Right.
city that has the Void, that's what this Star Wars thing is made for.
Right,
but that's
right.
the whole notion of the props are real. If you touch anything, it's actually tactile set up in the right way. But there was a moment where like K2SO is like your NPC like mission giver.
Sure.
And it's just like, okay, so there's like a CGI rendering of a robot there, and you're just listening to him give you the instructions before the gates open, and then you walk out. And you're ready for the mind blow of like the doors open, and oh my God, there's a door opening right there. But as I was walking out, I like my hand brushed across, and I was like, wait a second. And I went back, and there was a fucking full-scale K2SO there.
Oh, like a real, right. I think you were telling me about that.
There was like
That's
a
very cool.
10-foot statue, and I was like feeling it, and I was like, this isn't just they put a mannequin in here. Like, this is
Yeah.
clearly
This is like a metal
K2SO.
robot.
But it has the right dimensions
Yeah, no,
of
no,
everything.
I get you.
Hey, Ben,
get
can
you.
I get a time check on how long we've been talking about Star Wars on the Big Fish episode?
Yeah, I'd say about 25 minutes.
20,
So it's a
25
podcast
minutes.
called Blank Check. It's about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in
Now,
their careers.
Can I ask you guys one last question?
Anything.
If we're playing by the rule of the less you know about a Star Wars character, the cooler the character is.
Right, the Kit Fisto rule, let's call it.
The
Yeah,
Kid
yeah, the
Fisto rule.
Fisto,
But you guys know more about the cartoons,
formula.
and I don't know as
Sure.
much.
We don't know much.
Neither of
I
us
don't
are
know much.
super hard into them, but we
and
know
the
more.
comic books
Yeah.
I've dabbled with, and they're actually
Yeah.
incredibly good.
The new Marvel
well
ones
done.
are
but I don't know
Yeah.
what else has been explained there.
Mhm.
By the Kit Fisto rule,
Mhm.
do I know more or less about Kit Fisto or Plo Koon? Right?
I don't
got
think
that name
there's
right.
any Plo Koon content.
Is it Kloon or
Yeah.
Kloon?
Clune? No, I think
we
you
got
named
corrected.
Clune.
I think it's.
Koon or Kloon? It must be Kloon.
No, it's Plo Koon, right?
I think we got corrected.
Oh, no,
on
no.
it.
It's Plo Coon.
Plo
Yeah.
Koon. That's what I said
Right,
initially.
yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Never doubt George Lucas's ability to walk right up to
I
the
know.
line that's of something that feels like
As
in bad
we
taste.
debated it, I said to myself, it better be Clune, actually.
Yeah.
I hope I was the one who was
Yeah,
wrong.
are
Nope.
they going to be playing Jizz at
Yeah.
the cantina?
Most definitely. Jizz, America's
Right.
favorite
Yes.
music genre.
Of course.
I
There will be a cantina with a cantina band that you can go hang out at.
that
Max
has to
Rebo?
be.
Is it
I
gonna
don't
be
know.
Max?
I've read
I
about
don't
the
know.
cantina band. I haven't read about Max Rebo.
Yeah.
I heard Cy Snoodles won't sign the contract.
Snoodles is holding out.
It's kind of like a Fleetwood Mac thing. They all dated.
Yeah,
and
He's
it's
the
Lindsey
real
Buckingham.
fucked up. Yeah, it's real fucked up.
I was desperately like, I can think of a third name, but I forgot the
Max
other
Rebo,
names.
Cy Snoodles,
Something cool guy.
Droopy McCool.
Droopy McCool.
Droopy McCool.
What
That's
we
it is.
once joked Ben would name his son.
Yeah.
Droopy McCool.
Droopy McCool, who you always think is the elephant, but that's Max Rebo.
Right.
Droopy McCool just looks like an upside down pig.
Right. It's more of an old. Max Rebo is the band leader in the
Right.
old swing band.
Right, right,
He's like
right,
a Tito Puente.
Yeah, exactly.
Cy Snoodles is the front woman, and then Droopy McCool is just a pile of laundry.
Droopy
on the
McCool looks
keys,
like
right?
an upside down pig.
Yeah.
An upside down pig. is
Yeah.
how I would
Oh no, it's
describe
not the
it.
keys. He's
Yeah. Yeah,
playing
yeah, yeah.
the
Max Rebo
yeah.
plays the keys.
Yeah, Max Rebo's
Of
on the
course.
keys.
Right.
Who else you got? No, these
It's just
names.
the
These
three
are
of them,
not
right?
names.
Or no, they expanded it in the re-releases because originally it was just the
They
three
added.
of them.
They
In the
did a new
re-releases, they
CGI
made Cy
version of Cy
Snoodles
Snoodles.
like a CGI. Before she was just a puppet who just sort of did this.
Right.
Just sort of jerky.
My favorite song.
Oh no! Wait, no. There's the guy who's like like he's like a little
that guy
furry
they
guy.
added. Right.
Yeah, they just added him.
Who
I don't know
looks
who
like
he
the
is.
annoying frog or something.
So is the answer
Right.
Plo Koon?
The
Yeah.
answer. Well, here's what I would
Yeah.
say. You know less about Plo Koon, but it feels like you know less about Kit Fisto because there's so much more to know.
But we see, here's the difference. Kit Fisto fights. We
Right.
see him
Right,
in
he's
that
got a
big
saber.
arena
There,
fight.
there is a larger amount of information we know about Kit Fisto, but
right.
there is a smaller percentage that we know about Kit Fisto in terms of his entire life
Right,
story.
right,
He's an
right.
Edward Bloom type figure.
He has enough of a presence that we should know more.
Right,
Whereas
'cause you're
Plo
like-
Koon, they nailed it.
He's a simple guy. He's a company man.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Ki-Adi-Mundi, I think, has been very thoroughly explained in the comic books.
And
Perhaps
he has like
over-explained. Yeah.
dialogue. You know, he like speaks in
Yeah.
the prequels.
He
and
speaks his
stuff.
mind. He
Yeah.
speaks his mind. Ben, quick time check.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
doing.
now we're hitting about 30
Now we're
minutes.
30.
Is
Cool.
everyone mad or are they amused at the callback?
Thrilled.
I think they
overzealous-
demand
I think
it.
people would be upset if we didn't do this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for episode 9. People keep saying a title's coming, but we know nothing about it really.
When is that out? May or December?
Christmas?
Christmas.
What if it turns out the movie is called Star Wars Episode 9: a title is coming, and we've had the
Oh,
title.
Yeah. What if it's just called Fisto?
Oh my god! Well, what are the other standalones they got coming up?
They canceled all.
It's
They
kind
canceled
of in
all of them?
flux.
Yeah.
They've sort of
They're like,
taken
we're
their foot off the
reassessing.
gas. Yeah,
Because of Solo.
Yeah.
yeah. Where they're like, let's release episode 9. We have this TV show in the works called The Mandalorian, which is like going to be probably more what you're talking about, like a,
Scumbum Western
Right.
starring
With, like, a little less
Mandalorian
to
bounty
do with
hunter.
the main-
Is it going to be for network or for their new
for
stream?
the new
Disney
Disney.
It's going to be one of the
Netflix.
things
Nick
they get.
Nolte's on it as a
Ooh.
regular cast member.
That's right.
Ooh, I might
Werner
have to-
Herzog is on it as a regular
Wait,
cast
as a
member.
cast member?
That is
Uh-huh.
true.
Oh, how did I not know
That
that?
is true.
Oh, I'm
That
so
is
happy.
true. Well, they're going to start
Oh,
working.
so it's going to be a disaster. Nolte
Not
and
impossible.
Herzog
Not
together at last.
John Favreau is the showrunner.
2019 era Nick Nolte.
Yes.
Right.
In a show that co-stars Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you imagine how much time Werner Herzog is going to spend studying Nick Nolte as if he were like an environmental
right.
phenomenon?
He's going to make a documentary being like
A creature in a zoo.
with like creep shots of Nick Nolte being like, nature has ravaged this man, like that. Like, here you like it. All right.
Once he caused damage with his fist, now time causes damage to his face.
And then they have the Rian Johnson trilogy that is sort of not being talked about anymore.
Right, and then the Game of Thrones guys trilogy that's sort of
No,
not being
that's-
talked about anymore.
That's dead.
You think that's dead? I don't know if that's dead.
I
That's
wonder
alive.
I think that's alive.
if they really backed out of all that to reassess the strategy. I respect that because it lets me know they're trying to say, how do we keep this thing alive? 2 or 3 decades from now.
I think
Right.
that's
I think
the thought.
someone
Let's not
intervened
blow
and was
it
like,
out.
we don't need a Star Wars every year.
Right.
Like,
They were like, let's make the movies feel like events. And
people
we
are going to
can
get sick of it.
Do
Right.
comics, do streaming shows, do all the other stuff in between.
And Solo showed that, I'm
Right.
sure.
Make movies feel really
If
special.
Solo had hit, we would be Ewan McGregor, star of Big Fish, would be filming his Obi-Wan spinoff. Like,
Oh, that was a
right
rumor,
now.
right?
Yeah.
That wasn't just a rumor. That was like
pretty much
pretty much ready to
That
go.
one's a shame.
I agree, because that's what I want.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yes.
There is a part of me that feels like
Ben's laughing at me.
there's a part of me that feels
40
like
minutes now?
well, I will just say there's a part of me that feels like there's certain salvageable pieces of the prequels. One of them being that we all did go, Ewan McGregor's that's pretty cool.
Good
He's
performance.
kind of nailing it as
Yeah.
young Obi-Wan.
And also, I just like the
Why
idea
not
he's
get those
aged up.
back?
Yeah.
He's aged.
Yeah.
Right. That he spent
Appropriately.
time with this character.
Yeah.
And now it's 15 years later or whatever. He's ready to do middle-aged Obi-Wan.
Right.
Don't cast another guy as Harrison Ford. Like, that's much more,
Well,
that's
and-
a harder
yes.
needle to
And
thread.
he's been off the grid in general a little bit. Like, we'd all be happy to just see Ewan McGregor
He's
again.
starting to hit hard again now because it's like
He's back.
Christopher Robin, he's doing the sequel to The Shining, then he's the
Dr.
villain
Sleep,
in the
Dr.
Harley
Sleep.
Quinn movie. Like now he's like a big studio guy
Yeah.
again.
You know what I was thinking about if we're talking about prequel stuff?
Mm.
I was thinking about this on the way here. It is wild that George Lucas made a character, and it's everybody made fun of it, so who cares? Ahmed Best has gone on record publicly saying he considered
Yeah, he was
killing
suicidal.
him.
He was
I know.
very close to suicide.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
that's
The damage that George Lucas caused.
has any other actor
Right.
played a role
Been like,
so
a role
incredible that
ruined me
they've
this hard.
publicly said many times,
No.
I contemplated murdering myself based on how people reacted to
And
that.
your wife had like worked with him and said he's like the sweetest,
Lovely man.
hardest working
Said
guy in the
I
world.
know.
Right.
And I have a
A
little
lovely
regret.
man.
And our fans bring it up sometimes where
we
they
were
were like,
too hard
they were
on him
really
back
hard
in the
on
day.
him.
We
And
were
it's
too
like,
hard on him back in the day. Yeah.
it's not his fault as much as it is, the writer and director of this character.
Yeah,
It
it's
was,
just-
it was his big leg.
laid out the
It was
blueprint.
his big
It
leg.
was his big leg.
It was his big
if I
leg.
can bring that up again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still not
Um,
past it.
I think let's
One of my
talk
first
about
acting
Big Leg.
roles.
Oh, of course. I remember.
Big Leg also my big leg.
Big Leg's your Big Leg?
Big Leg was my big leg.
You went into Big Leg thinking like,
Is it
this is
possible
gonna be it for me.
recurring?
Right,
Possible
right.
recurring. You're one of Parnell's students.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Big Leg was my big leg. Of course, there's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have early success.
Now, I did bring up Big Lake.
Yes.
Not necessarily
Big
because
Lake. What fits in a big lake?
I was just going to say it is a segue towards Big Fish if you guys want to take it.
We're taking it
Okay.
because sometimes directors have massive success early on in their career and are given a series of blank checks, make whatever crazy passion projects they want.
Yeah.
And sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce baby.
Sure.
And this is a miniseries on the films, of course, of Tim Burton. The only thing we've been talking about this episode.
Right.
It's called Podward Scissor Cast.
Mhm.
And Big Fish is, I think, a big fulcrum point in his career.
Yeah, it's about the midway point of his career,
Yes.
movie-wise. Yeah.
It's the midway point, and for me, it creates a lot of interesting sliding doors questions.
Okay. You mean like you think if this thing had been a huge hit, like maybe Tim Burton's the latter half of his career looks different?
I think so. I kind of think so. I don't know exactly what it would have been.
Yeah.
But I get the sense in this movie that he's really trying to stretch himself. And then I think the problem is when you have a guy like that who out of the gate makes movies that are so huge, his bar for success is so high that
Yeah.
something like this that was kind of received as like a double or a triple and like a well-liked movie that did okay
Yeah.
is just like, fuck, I got to go back and do like a remake of something.
Now, can I ask, because you guys know more than I do,
Yeah.
I obviously know about a lot of Burton's work, but I'm not a completist. Is this his biggest departure from
His
gothic
usual
vibe,
stuff, right?
I would argue so. I mean,
hot topic?
my
kind
big
of.
take on this movie is that this is the only time he's made a film where like there are scenes that take place entirely within the real world.
Right.
Because even Ed Wood is such a heightened version of the real world. Like every other movie he has made has fantastical elements. Is
Right, this is
very
the only one
stylized.
that's
Even
like
Batman,
in hospitals and homes and like people
right,
are
those are like
drinking
totally
water.
normal
quiet
scenes.
human moments.
Right, and to
Yeah.
me, as like a Burton-obsessed kid, I was like, this is really interesting to see Tim Burton try to shoot a normal dialogue scene between actors.
Sure.
You know?
Right.
and try to ground that, which I think works in certain scenes better than others.
If you got Billy Crudup in a scene, you've got a problem.
It's weird. Opinion. When I was young, when this movie came out, I was all in Crudup's performance, and watching it now, I find it very difficult.
I'm going to go on record and say I unabashedly love this movie.
I'm asked pretty much in the talk with us about it.
I mean, when you put it out there, I did pick it, and I loved it to the degree that I was shocked when I started hearing people. Because I don't know if this is universal, but at least in my circle, I've heard people talk shit,
right,
and say it's like a Hallmark card, and say
that it's a gooey
the performances
movie,
are bad.
Yeah,
and I was shocked because I felt like I had witnessed. I will say
we haven't introduced
a classic.
Oh, Chris Gethard's our guest today.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Buy my new book, Lose Well.
Ben just wrote on a piece of paper, introduce Chris.
Cool. It's Blank Check, Power Scissor Cast, Big Fish, Chris Gethard. We got it all out of the way.
People know who.
Time check, 45 minutes?
Yeah.
It's about 40 minutes. Yeah.
I loved it. I loved this movie, and I thought I was shocked that people didn't.
When this movie came out,
did you see it in theaters?
I did, and I have actually. I have a story that I don't know if it's amazing to the outside, but for me, the circumstances by which I saw this movie, I will never forget. I will never forget.
I want to hear that.
Well, okay, so
shit.
I've always been like a very big Jersey guy. If you know my work at all, you've heard me ramble about New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I lived there for the first 23 years of my life. And it was a place that I really loved. It was a place where I felt very safe. And it was a big piece of my identity. When I started doing comedy in New York, I was 19. And I kind of became known as like, oh, that's that kid who takes the train in from Jersey. And he's so much younger than the other people. And I think people liked watching me figure it out. And then I would get back on the train and go back to Rutgers. And I was this kid from Jersey. When I was 23, I got hired for my first ever job in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Really my first, outside of doing like some spot acting gigs, like, you know, dressing up for some of those Conan bits.
Was this for Crossballs?
Crossballs.
Yeah.
So I got this job on a Thursday and was told that I had to be there on Monday. I'd never set foot in California in my life. I think I'd never been further west than Chicago. And all of a sudden it was like, you have to move out of your house where I still lived with two of my college roommates. You have to quit your job. You just have to go.
Right.
And the job I was working at the time, I worked at a magazine called Weird New Jersey.
Right,
I'd worked there for 3 or 4 years. And if you most people would not know that magazine, but I will tell you, anybody who grew up in New Jersey who's around my age or younger will say it's an institution. It's an institution. And if you think about sort of the ethos of Weird New Jersey, it is sort of local legends and myth making with a pretty clear policy of who cares if it's true, if it's a fun story.
Sure.
And a lot of these stories are rooted in some shred of fact and then grow out of control. So I fly out to California. I quit my job there. My boss was like, oh my, he later was like, you can always give 2 weeks. They pressured you into not, just give 2 weeks. If they're not going to give you that, you should be wary of working with them. I was like, you're right. But I didn't know that. I was young. It felt like my shot. So I moved out to California. This was before there was a UCB theater there. There wasn't much of a comedy scene. The comedy scene that there was well beyond my experience point to participate in
it. It was like big shots only.
Really. Yeah, big. I wasn't going to go up on stage at Largo at the age of 23. And I was shy. I was scared. I was depressed. I'd been on medication for a year. This was in the early 2000s. I had all these side effects. All of a sudden, my mom was terrified that I was going that far away when I was in that state. And I had a friend who I knew, I think 2 or 3 people. I knew 3 people who lived in California at the time. And one of them told me, why don't you come stay with me at first? And he lived, I believe, if I remember right, it was Huntington Beach. And he told me that was part of LA. And it is a very, very far. I believe it was about a 2-hour drive.
But I would be you, or I'd be like, Huntington Beach, sure. That's nearby,
I've heard of
right?
it.
Yeah.
And I think it was Huntington. I'm not sure. Whichever beach it was one of those beaches, you know the name. And my buddy shows up, lets me into his house, and he's like, hey, I got to go. And he doesn't even hang out with me.
Sure.
And I'm terrified and I'm overwhelmed. I walk on the boardwalk. I eat a fish taco for the first time in my life.
one of the loneliest and most overwhelming cities to be in, especially if you don't know anything about it.
Lost. Southern California is an isolating, and you feel it immediately.
Incredibly isolating.
Yeah.
And like the idea of going out for a walk, the city's just kind of like, you can't really do that. Like kind of laughing at you.
Yeah. I got one quick question for you.
Yeah.
The fish taco you ate, what was the size of that thing?
It was pretty small. I was shocked that
it wasn't a big fish taco.
it was not a big fish taco. It was a small fish taco. I like that you thought that was the moral story where I was going.
I didn't think that was the end of the story, but I thought that might be a little fun.
Pretty bump in the journey.
She said fish.
No, but that the first night I spent away from home and I mean home in a big sense.
I get it.
Yeah. Like my Samwise moment of I've never stepped this far away from my home. Like that's a very impactful scene.
Your Mount Doom was
a little bit
seeing big fish in Los Angeles?
I went to a movie theater, bought a ticket for the next movie that was playing. It was Big Fish. And here I am watching a movie that's about stories that don't necessarily need to be true. And why don't you just buy in? They're fun. It was my whole life that I had just walked away from kind of summed up. And then also about this character that's like, no, you got to kind of go out and build your own legend. And you have to go into places that don't make sense for you. And you have to go into environments that aren't the small place you come from. And that doesn't mean you can't show pride in being from a small place or a beat up place. All these things that the movie wears on its sleeve. I sat there in that theater and I was so scared, but I just cried so hard. And it gave me a lot of, it felt like a weight had been taken off my shoulder of like, okay, I made the right choice. You got to take some big swings and you got to kind of go on your own hero's journey, and you got to love stories.
Ding dong.
Oh, get the door.
Ding dong.
Who's that at the door?
Oh my God, look at those dusty spurs. There's so much dust coming in. I can't even see who it is. The silhouette of a cowboy as he steps up to the mic. Hey there, sucker.
Hello?
It's me, the outlaw Josie Scott.
Josie Scott?
The outlaw Josie Scott.
Not Josie Wales?
Well, that's what you would think.
Okay.
The last time Eero was a sponsor on this podcast,
Okay.
the two people doing the ad read were Chad Kroeger of Nickelback
Wow.
Yeah.
and Josie Wells of Saliva.
Okay.
And a lot of listeners wrote in and said, I think you meant Josie Scott of Saliva. And I'm here to say they were wrong. We swapped names, so no one made any mistakes. So my name is the outlaw Josie Scott of Saliva.
So you're like disaffected bushwhacker cowboy Josie, renamed Josie Scott.
I traded names with the lead singer of Saliva.
You're still alive somehow.
Yes, I am.
And through this name switch, you've also acquired the ability to pitch Eero?
Yes.
Well, Eero is cool. I mean,
That was part of the deal. We'd swap names, exchange driver's licenses, and also both become spokespeople for Eero. Because I'll tell you, out west, it's tough to get a good signal.
Well, in 2016, they introduced the Eero home Wi-Fi system, which brings the idea of multiple access points placed throughout a house to consumers for the first time. Gets you a fast, reliable connection in every room and the backyard.
Every room of the saloon, even the stables.
But even maybe your like turnip patch outside or whatever will get some good Wi-Fi.
What did you say about my turnip patch?
Did we get good Wi-Fi?
Watch your tongue.
Well, if you use the new Eero and the Eero Beacon to allow a customer to build a Wi-Fi system that's more perfectly tailored to their home than ever before, you'll get great signal.
Tailored like a fine boot.
They offer
or
more
leather chaps.
More speed.
Or a saddle.
They offer more speed and range in the same high quality, elegant design that people have come to expect. It's the second generation model. It's in my home right now, supplying fast internet. When we watch like a movie for the feed or whatever, Eero is giving us that.
I'm a cowboy.
So they got a 5 gigahertz radio. You just said I'm a cowboy.
You watch your tongue.
They've got a 5 gigahertz radio. They've got tri-band, so it's twice as fast as the predecessor. And whatever your Wi-Fi needs, it has the power to seamlessly blanket your home in fast, reliable
They
Wi-Fi.
have tri-band?
Yeah, they got tri-band.
I try to rob banks because I'm an outlaw.
They've also got Eero Plus, which can give you simple, reliable security to defend your home's devices against threats like malware, spyware, phishing attacks, and unsuitable content.
Threats
it's all
like
bundled
outlaws.
together. Yes.
Horse
Outlaws.
gangs.
Horse gangs, fishing attacks, whatever you're thinking of.
Roughhousing.
So they've got total network protection. Eero Plus has the ability to block malicious and unwanted content all across your entire network. They've got advanced security. You can check the sites you visit against a database of millions of known threats, and Eero Plus can stop you from visiting malicious sites accidentally.
Look, it's tough to get a good signal in the West. So if you want to send an email to your favorite metal band lead singer, you got to get Eero. Otherwise, you'll never legally swap your names.
Yeah.
I'm the outlaw Josie Scott.
Okay,
I'm having trouble looking at you.
Can I
at your
just say
face.
Why I look exactly what I sound like.
Eero Plus also has content blocking that'll stop your kids from looking at violent or illegal content.
Like shoot 'em ups.
Yeah, and it's got ad blocking.
Standoffs.
It's rid of annoying ads and pop-ups on all your devices. And they can give you password management through 1Password, stuff like that.
The cactuses of the internet. That's what I'm calling pop-ups. The cactuses of the cacti of the internet.
So I've got my Eero.
I'm a cowboy.
I got a 2-floor house. It gives me internet everywhere, which was a problem before I got Eero. Genuine problem. Would not get into the back of my house. On
Big
the
Nice.
floor. Big Nice.
I'm a big fan of the show.
Oh, thank you, Josie.
I'm a checkmate.
I didn't realize.
Yeah.
So never think about Wi-Fi again. You can get $100 off the Eero base unit and 2 beacons package and 1 year of Eero Plus. You can go to Eero.com/check and at checkout enter check. That's EERO.com/check.
Do you mind if I sing a little ditty for the listeners?
Go ahead.
And they say that an Eero can save us. Not gonna stand there and wait.
That offer again is eero.com/check and enter check at checkout.
Gran Torino.
Okay, that was good.
Thank you.
Are you a cowboy?
Yes. So, like, Tim Burton was my guy. For the first, 10 movies was or 9, I was hasn't missed. I'm in the corner. Everything he does. This guy speaks my language. My whole relationship to movies is evolving around my, interest in his movies and, understanding that someone makes films and all this sort of stuff. And then Planet of the Apes is just this, the JFK assassination
film.
for me, right? It's just
oh, was that back to back with
yes.
Planet of the Ooh.
This is 2 years later, but this is his,
But that
his
for
last
me-
project was Planet
That
of the
was
Apes.
like the
I fell
day
asleep.
the innocence
I
died.
fell asleep
Yeah.
to Planet of the Apes.
It's a boring movie.
About 11 minutes in, and
Sure.
I slept through the whole thing.
I mean, it's
I'm
a
not kidding.
It's a
No,
horrific
I believe
film.
you.
It's a horrific film.
There's nothing that would rouse you, once you've fallen asleep. The movie's just boring.
I didn't realize that historically this was the bounce back from Planet of the
right.
Apes.
So for
Sure.
me, the stakes of this movie were this felt like Michael Jordan coming out of retirement.
Yeah.
I was I
to be
want to
clear,
believe
for you.
for me. I said the stakes of this movie for me.
I know. I just wanted to triple emphasize.
right.
Look, we should all just be happy he made a sports analogy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Give me some credit.
Exactly. He came out of retirement.
The one thing I know how to reference in sports is
Right.
anything related to the plot of Space Jam.
But
So Planet of the Apes felt like his baseball career. And I was I want to believe that was
I
a
see. So you're
weird-
saying it's him coming out of retirement the first time where he comes
back.
out and he's just, I'm back.
Right.
2-word statement and he's great again.
Planet of the Apes, I was is Tim Burton going to be playing minor league baseball for the rest of his career? Is that guy gone?
Right.
And then Big Fish, from the moment they announced it, I was this sounds different. This sounds like an evolution. This was John August, who,
You gotta, we do need to mention, you gotta worship at the altar of John August a little bit, right?
Well, so
John August?
he reads the manuscript for this movie before it was published.
Right.
His
Options it right
father
away.
had just died, and he was I need this. He had
You
written,
mean the book? He reads the manuscript of the book.
yes,
Right.
He had
And
written,
it was unpublished.
It was unpublished.
It was to be published.
Right.
Right.
But it had not hit the market yet. He read it. His father had died, and he was I get this so fucking hard. He had written Go, which was his big hot calling
Right.
card spec script at Columbia, went to Columbia and was please fucking buy this. Worked so hard to try to adapt it. The book is far more unstructured and just sort of episodic. There's not as much of a spine, I think, around it.
Sure.
And he was trying to make it with Steven Spielberg and Jack Nicholson.
Right.
That was the plan. Was this was going to be A list of
This
A-list.
is one of those Spielbergs that came close, where Spielberg
Came
was going to
really
do
close.
it, and then he decided to make Catch Me If You Can.
It was,
I think.
right. This was
Yeah.
going to be
I
the
never
thing
knew that.
right after
Yeah.
Minority
It
Report.
makes so much sense because the
Yeah.
who's better at
Right. Spielberg seems almost ludicrously like
Perfect.
a match for this.
For
Right.
like an unapologetic nostalgia feel.
Right.
About
Hold-
dads
hold
and
off in the
distance
cool.
with
Yeah.
your dad
Right.
and, and the magic of
That's so
storytelling.
interesting.
right.
It is.
Right.
It's a Spielberg movie.
It
It's
is.
not a Tim Burton
No.
movie.
I agree.
So
Outside of a
that's-
character, very important character that I just want to say we have to talk about at one point.
Danny DeVito the werewolf?
No, better. Although so close.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mr. Soggy Bottom is
Okay.
the Kid Fisto of this movie. I'm obsessed with Mr. Soggy
I mean, if
Bottom.
you wanted to sum up Tim Burton in one image, it's Mr. Soggy Bottom,
Crying.
a single tear
Yeah,
running down his cheek,
with
having
the-
opened up his chest
Yes.
to reveal a silver gun.
That is incredible.
It's my favorite part of the movie. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Deep Roy's a legend. This is the first Deep Roy appearance in
no, he's in something else.
Is he?
I
All right,
forgot
I'm
that
gonna
he
look
was
it up.
uncredited. Yeah. I
Gonna
think
look
he's
it up.
under makeup so you don't realize it's him or something.
Deep Roy, who was the Yoda stand-in.
Yeah.
Is
You
that
know
true?
that?
Oh yeah.
No.
Mr. Soggy Bottom
He was-
standing in
on
for
what, the
Yoda.
prequel?
He was Droopy McCool. He
No, in
was-
the original.
In the original?
When you see like
That was Mr. Soggy Bottom.
He was the stand-in. The stand-in.
Yeah, I know
I mean,
he
it's
wasn't.
a puppet. You know,
Yeah,
right?
I know
right.
he wasn't the real Droopy McCool.
Oh
That's
no,
not
Droopy McCool. He operated.
He
was a
did.
puppeteer.
He was Droopy
he was
McCool.
drooping. I had no idea we were going to come that full
He
circle.
was an
That's
Ewok.
on his IMDb?
He was an Ewok. It's on. Yeah, it's on. His IMDb is basically like, as is true for a lot of little people, like any fantasy movie you've heard
Right,
of, basically.
right, right.
You know what I mean? Where
Willow
it's like,
and-
he was like a background guy,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
know. But let me see.
He had some real marquee characters. there.
He's in Planet of the Apes.
Thank you. Okay, he's
He's,
one of the ape kids.
He's a gorilla kid.
He's the
Yes.
one that I think a fucking Helen Bonham
Also,
Carter chastises.
Just in case we lose our train of thought with him, I have to point out his scenes in Eastbound and Down are so funny.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
That's
oh,
him,
my
right?
God, yes, yeah, of course.
That dude,
Aaron, yeah,
I'm Yoda,
yeah.
bitch, and then rips off the fake mustache and says, "I always carry two."
Yeah.
That scene, I rewound it about 10 times in a row the first time I saw it, and I cried laughing.
He's
and that's rare.
a
for me.
really good actor.
We're gonna get to
Mr.
Charlie and the
Seinfeld.
Chocolate Factory, which is like his masterpiece, where he played every
Yeah.
Oompa Loompa. But I love that guy.
That shit
and-
bugged me out though.
And where Tim
It's
Burton
great.
demanded that they pay Deep Roy $1 million, which I love.
Really?
Yeah.
Deep Roy
that's
pocketed
awesome.
a cool mill. Like, he was just like, this guy's been a fucking journeyman. We're going to have him play
Right.
80 Oompa Loompas.
165
Pony up and give him $1 million.
Mhm.
He played how many?
165.
Yeah, give him a
He played
fucking
165 characters in one movie.
Yeah, where it, like, and they had to like
damn,
photograph
Soggy
him
Bottom.
doing every move, like
Soggy Bottom.
you know,
Bringing
Soggy
the
Bottom.
heat.
Fucking Soggy Bottom. All right,
So this Planet of the Apes felt like, fuck, have we lost Tim Burton?
right. It's sort of one of those things where he
Yeah.
was on such a run that him getting off the run, you're like, oh, is he just that's it? He's sidetracked
right,
forever.
Right. And then the Spielberg thing, the analogy was kind of interesting because Spielberg was a guy where for so long they were like, he's so kinetic, he's so much style, he's so caught up in his childhood. When's he going to grow up and make a real movie?
Right.
Which the critics of Tim Burton in the 80s and 90s would always say that. Like, we get it, you can create things, but when are you going to sit down and tell a real story? Which I always found kind of reductive.
Yeah.
I think now in retrospect, people are like, oh, we should have given that guy more credit when he was doing this wacko shit. Because
Right.
no one does wacko shit as well as
Because
him.
before it, we're talking Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands,
Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Was Nightmare Before Christmas before it?
Doesn't direct that, but that's his story.
Right. Still from his world.
Yes, right. His run in order is Pee-wee, Beetlejuice,
Correct.
Batman, Edward Scissorhands,
Right.
Batman Returns, Ed Wood, Mars Attacks, Sleepy Hollow, Planet of the Apes.
Damn.
So not everyone likes Mars Attacks and Sleepy Hollow. So for
Understood.
some people, maybe Burton, the Rose is wilting.
Right,
but
and
I
Sleepy
think,
Hollow did well, Mars Attacks didn't. But for me, it was like,
But Mars Attacks, I think, has aged well. In
I think it's a
people's
masterpiece.
minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mars Attacks is aged very nice.
Ed Wood, was Ed Wood a more, would you say that was closer to like a
Yeah,
less
That's a mature
fantasy?
film,
Yes.
and it makes
Okay.
no money.
And
but
I
it
think
wins
it's his
some
best
Oscars.
movie.
Flirted with, he'd flirted
did.
with it.
But it's still, that movie's very much like a weird comedy. It's playing
Right.
a weird tonal game. I think that's his best film. I think the film's incredible.
Right.
But you go like, well, there's like a clear lateral move of like Tim Burton making a highly stylized film about people who make highly stylized films.
Right.
And then this felt like, is this Tim Burton trying to do the Spielberg evolution
Yeah.
of just like, I'm going to sort of make the movies about reckoning with my sort of permanent state of adolescence,
Yeah.
my obsession with fantasy worlds, you know?
Yeah.
Now, at the time, I remember feeling like, bullet dodged. We don't want Spielberg making this. This is so in his wheelhouse that he's going to go so sappy with it. But this is weirdly the period, as we've covered on this
This is
podcast, where
slightly
Spielberg starts getting
melancholy
really
Spielberg.
dark. Like the fact that he makes Catch Me If You Can instead, which is the other my weird relationship with my father, you can't go home again movie.
Yes,
but it's a movie that is like so sad.
And then he starts making some of like really grim dystopian sci-fi.
Right. Minority Report's the year, same year. Right.
So you could argue that Tim Burton and Steven Spielberg
kind of switched,
sort of tried to flop cultural roles for 1 year.
Right. He becomes a really tortured sort of dystopian filmmaker.
Right.
And then Tim Burton is now maybe seeing like, can I move into the Spielberg stage? The other big thing here is in between Planet of the Apes and this movie, he ends his relationship with Lisa Marie, which lasted for the better part of a decade. Shacks up with Helena Bonham Carter. She gets pregnant. He's about to have his first child, and both of his parents die. I know all of this.
He knows everything.
He does proceed, I will say, a bold move to, I believe, gives his wife
3 roles.
3 roles?
Yeah,
in
you
the
could
same
argue
film?
3 separate roles. Yes.
Right? The witch, the young girl, and then...
well, she plays...
She's really 2 roles, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the witch and then the real person.
But plays the real person at 2 different ages.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Does,
plays her as a...
She plays the sort of vaguely fantasy version of adult Jenny and then plays the... Right. Because those are also 2 very different tones of performance when she has to work against...
Well, initially when she's the witch, you're like, oh, he gave his girlfriend a cameo in the movie.
Right.
And then when she comes back, you're like, oh, she's like the dramatic spine of the movie. Right.
In the most Tim Burton-y part of the movie is the witch.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. But so this to me felt like, is he going to like get it back? Is he going to go right back in the pocket, but also grow, also evolve? Does this become a turning point where like Planet of the Apes is the movie that makes him take a long, hard look in the mirror and go who does Tim Burton want to be for the next 10 years? Right. Who's Tim Burton in the 2000s? And I saw this movie and was like, unqualified triumph. I don't think I've told you this. I walked out of this theater and said, this is my #1 favorite movie of all time.
Wow.
Didn't you also see it 10 times or something?
I saw it, I think, I was trying to do the math on it, at least 8 in theaters.
That's
because
crazy.
I don't cry at movies. I saw
cry at
this.
movies all the time.
It destroyed me so hard that I was like, I need to go back. I need another hit of that thing.
I cry in movies.
You know, I'm a very emotional
I'm an
person.
easy crier. This movie ruins me. And I always know it's going to. Like, I'm like...
But now, see, I feel like the sense I've gotten from our pre-conversations,
David's a little more reserved.
Is that you are a little bit more in the camp of.
Well, can I talk about my experience with Big Fish?
Yeah, because I just want to put one more.
Chris had his incredibly profound, like, sort of
life changes.
Growing up is, complicated but ultimately necessary story.
Right. You gave us a biographer's level of detail about where Tim Burton's life was at the time.
Right. And my level of investment, my mental sanity being reliant on whether or not he could pull it out.
How old are you when this is 2003?
14? This is my freshman year of high school.
I'm 23.
All right.
I'm 23.
I'm 17.
I just want to, before you get to your relationship, state the big elephant in the room.
My relationship's not going to be that big, by the way. But yes.
No, but there's the big elephant we have to acknowledge, which is we're recording this 4 days after Albert Finney dies.
That's
Albert
true.
Finney, who's maybe your favorite leading man in the history of cinema.
I love Albert Finney
is an actor
so
you're like
much.
very emotionally attached to.
He's my dad.
Right.
I mean, like,
right.
He
I
is,
didn't want to say that before you, but
he's the working class English guy who kind of jumped with the ranks. And as an English actor who's very crucial as a star when he's young.
Right.
As this is a more working class guy. This is like a salt of the earth guy, which
and
in the
father,
60s in Britain is my father was a working class guy.
But when I went to see Saturday Night, Sunday Mornings, you were like, you should know that's my dad's movie.
Right. Like that is my
That's
dad's
the movie that my father
sure.
sat me down and was like, this is the movie about me.
Right.
So David was introduced to young Albert Finney as his father saying, this is my analog in the
But Finney rules, man. Finney's always good. Like I love every phase of Finney. I love this phase, where he's, he's an old guy and he's a bit of a ham. He's terrific in the film.
Was he nominated?
He was not even nominated, and Tim Robbins wins for Mystic River, which is not a good performance.
And you could also say, because we have all we've been talking very manic fashion about Crudup's weird in this. Finney might save this movie.
He certainly saves any scene he's in with Crudup. Like Crudup is like walking around the set smashing it, and Finney's like, "No, come on, don't do that." Sorry, carry on.
No. I think it's. I need to hear the dissenting opinion.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Look. So for me, I'm an Oscar watcher. As you know, I'm a big Oscars fan, especially when I'm younger.
Yeah.
And this movie, when it was coming out, everyone was like, "This is it. Burton's making the leap. Like he's going to get Oscar nominations. This movie's going to be huge. This is going to be like when Spielberg sort of finally got anointed. Like it'll be the big moment where like Hollywood is like Burton."
You've made a grown-up movie.
Exactly. You've been a weirdo, and you've made your money.
This is a
and
Tony, glossy,
now we recognize you.
Grown-up movie, yeah.
And so then when I saw this movie, I had the reaction that I feel like a lot of people had, which was like, that thing is a fucking slog. You know, it's long. It like the hype was so deafening, and like, you know, it's okay, but like it wasn't like I think I was expecting like to be like Spielberg, I guess, like to be blown away with wonder.
Which
you
is
know,
how
like
I
all
felt,
these like
yeah.
color, these sets, and this like you know, right? All this imagination on
Yeah.
screen, and I was more like that thing's kind of a slog. The ending is kind of amazing and like a Fellini movie, and sort of like just like hits you in the gut, and you're sort of like
Pays out like a slot
doubled.
machine.
Oh, it pays out like a slot
believe
machine,
it
which
Fucking
is your
pays
favorite.
out like a slot machine. That
We weren't
ending.
recording when I said it. I believe I said earlier it was a 3-point shot, and you actually said no, that was a 4-point
It's like
shot with the
yeah.
way that it saved that movie.
in the
it's
big
an LJ
in the Big
moment.
Three basketball league. You can hit a 4-point shot if you're standing in a specific circle on the
Oh, I
court.
thought you meant he got fouled and made the foul shot.
or it's the LJ. Yes, it could.
But it's
That's how
also-
close it was to disaster, though, for you. That if the ending,
Not disaster, but it was more like I was like very
Indifference.
mixed on it. I was sort of like, this is like, is this too syrupy? And like, it's so fucking long. It's not that long, but like, you know, it's a solid 2 hours. And,
2:15, I think.
right.
2:10. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, and then the ending destroys me. And I'm like, I can't like this movie just because the ending's that good, right? You know what I mean? And for my whole life, the rest of my life, I have always wrestled with like, do I just like the ending? And does it even work that way? If I like the ending so much, the movie must work for me in some way where it's like, it's laying the track.
So when
You know what I mean?
yes.
Like, you know,
Oh,
so
yes.
the ending wouldn't work for me if I didn't like the movie at all. Like, you can't just make a bad movie and then at the end it's like, you know, death. And I'm like, oh, you know, like it works for me.
When I was 14, I was all in. I was taking all that they got, right? When I watch it now, I've watched it twice in the last 2 years, right?
You rewatched it not that long ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is the first time I've rewatched it in a little while, and I see lumpiness for the first time. I was so madly like, you know, Edward Bloom, time stops, popcorn in the air, in love with this movie, where I was like, you know, Wreck-It Ralph style, I will brook no criticism.
Right.
You can't say anything bad about this movie. It's magic. It works. You're a cynical bastard, right?
Uh-huh.
And in the last 2 times I've watched it, I see a ton of problems. I see a lot of things that totally work for me, and I'm watching it, and
There's
it's
some
lumpy, and I'm going like, fuck, do I like overrate this thing in the mind? And then you get to the last 15 minutes, and it's not one of those things where just like, well, this is 15 minutes of good filmmaking. But it's one of those things where that only works if the movie have set up everything
Right.
properly. And it's one of those things where you go, even the things that feel like they kind of don't work in the movie up until that point end up lending power to the ending, bizarrely.
Right.
That's why I use the
agree.
slot machine analogy, because it's literally
And-
all the quarters you've been dumping
Yeah.
in.
And let me ask you guys too. When we're talking about the ending, there's the river,
I'm talking about
and then there's the funeral.
I go 15-minute
Both.
mark.
Right.
He wakes
Starting
up.
from-
We're talking about those in.
He wakes up in the
the
hospital. That
1-2
continuous,
punch.
right?
as-
What feels like
that-
a symphony.
That's when we're in a long distance race, and
Yes.
it has that moment of like it's time to fucking get my kick in and go for the ending, and you see it accelerate towards the finish line.
on the soundtrack. That is one 12-minute
What?
track
What?
from the time he wakes up to the end of the movie, and I
Do
think of
you
that
own
section.
the big
Yes,
fish
of course,
soundtrack.
Chris.
in how many
How long have we
media-
known each other?
In how many media do you own it though? That's my
How many
question.
media?
How many times have you
Like,
purchased
do you have it on CD
I bought it on
and
digital?
vinyl?
I
Yeah,
I
right.
don't own it on vinyl. I bought it on CD. I manually uploaded it onto my iTunes circa 2006, and still have that in the cloud.
You guys will like that. Okay, sidetrack. Since
Yeah.
we're talking soundtracks, didn't plan on talking about this today. I was in the car recently and had my iPod on, and I was with Allie, and it was on shuffle, and a track came up. It was an instrumental track,
Sure.
and Hallie was like, "What the hell is this?" And I said, "Oh, it's I listened to it on my way to jujitsu class to get pumped up. It's the Last of the Mohican soundtrack."
Fucking right,
And
Trevor
she-
Jones.
My wife just paused and went, "That is some midlife crisis shit."
I listened to the last Mohican soundtrack. I love
The
The Kiss. It's the best track. Yes.
I've talked about this. On
I
the
listen to
podcast
movie
before.
music all the time, mostly because I need something while I'm writing that's
Yeah.
not vocal.
Yeah.
no
Can
vocals.
I ask you, Dave, off of Griffin's point? I do feel like watching it back just a few nights ago in preparation for this. The length is in part because there's all these little vignettes, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Griffin's arguing that the ending
I agree with
proves
his
the
argument.
necessity of them. See, even I, an unabashed
Dick
defender of
Fisher.
this movie,
Sure.
is there a fun topic of discussion to be had?
Which vignette would you lose?
Which one would
There's no question which vignette you lose.
really?
No question.
Because
Okay,
I
I
debate
need to
them heavily
consider
in my
this.
mind.
There's no fucking question. And I would be sad to lose it because I think the payoff is nice, but there's no question what you lose.
There's no question
No.
which vignette you lose.
No.
I think I know.
There's one vignette where I'm like, when I'm watching it.
There's one vignette where
Yeah,
you're
where I'm
like,
like,
Okay, can I guess?
Sure.
And I'm going to go in the order of ones where I know it's not them.
Okay.
It's not the giant.
No.
Can't lose the
Can't
giant.
lose the Giant.
Giant is incredible.
Rules.
You can't lose
Ben.
Soggy Bottom.
Yeah, I mean, no way. I don't know about that.
Keep talking.
I'm going to say
Oh, David's playing close to
Yeah,
that.
I'm enjoying this now.
He's not tipping off his answer.
you can't lose Spectre.
No.
Him wandering into this weird
We should
magical
talk about
Stepford Wives.
Spectre,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah,
can't
there's
lose
issues.
Spectre.
Yeah.
You can't lose it.
No.
We have to talk
Wander
about
through the woods down the forbidden trail into this perfect town that seems so creepy.
Right.
Can't lose that.
No, I love that part. But although we have to talk about it.
him
But
in the army.
that's what you lose.
I kind of agree.
That's got to go.
You lose the conjoined twins.
I don't think that's got to go, but I think
like
if you need to cut
I like the
something-
twins because I like the eventual reveal that they're just regular twins. They're just two ladies, right?
That's a lovely moment.
I think that's a lovely moment. I don't like him with an English to Asian dictionary and like jumping into this fucking like ventriloquist where I'm just like, I get that it's a tall tale and that it's a little, it's supposed to be inflated.
It is
What's
one of those,
going on
it's a
here?
section of the
Siamese
movie
twins.
where you
I'm
go
gonna-
like, as opposed to the Steven Spielberg version of the movie, you remember like, oh right, Tim Burton is inherently a comedic filmmaker,
Sure.
and he cannot turn down what he thinks is a fun gag.
Right.
I would argue
Hit me.
that when you were at that funeral
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Crudup
I agree with this.
starts to realize that all these things are true,
Yeah.
but not as true.
Yeah.
That there's a middle ground that he never gave his father credit for.
This
and
is
that
when I
he
go
never
from,
bothered
like-
to ask.
I dropped down the levels of crying from like crying to sobbing.
Which I will
Yeah.
also say, in rewatching it too, the idea that all these people were close enough to Finney, they were close enough to Ed Bloom to travel
To
back
show
for his
up.
funeral,
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
but that none
yes.
of them came back throughout the entire course of Billy Crudup's life
Right.
to visit and show, maybe get him to chill out and realize some of this was based in fact, is a flaw.
That's actually a fair point.
Yeah.
I don't usually think about it, but
That being said,
Yeah.
I think that the conjoined twins showing up to you, everyone's amazement, and then separating where you go, oh,
I
so
think it's amazing.
that
I
story
love
was
that.
true. They
That's
just weren't.
important.
That was the exaggeration.
I'm just saying, if you're asking me
Sure.
which one to kill,
See, I
I'm
disagree.
killing that.
I would put something out there, and maybe
no.
your
who
love.
are you going to kill?
Well, it's a question for you guys
Sure.
because you are far more obviously film connoisseurs than I am. I would argue that if it wasn't name actors, you lose either Danny DeVito, at least for the length that he has, or Steve Buscemi as the bank robber.
See, Buscemi I love, and I like that the
the
character
Buscemi
goes through weird stages.
I love
I
it.
think the DeVito character maybe is a little too much.
I don't think you give him as much time to tease out the here's a fact about your loved
Agreed.
one and the werewolf.
I think
thing.
it's a little too much.
The werewolf thing is crazy because
Yeah.
it's sort of like, and it turned out he was a werewolf, and you're like, it did, and they don't
But-
bring it up again.
But Danny DeVito wandering naked
I like that.
out of the woods,
I like
with
that.
from behind shot, and the soggy bottom tier and gun moment is
Yeah.
to me brilliant. The way they stretched out that I worked once a year, I got a fact. Once a year, I got a fact. Once
Right.
a year, I got a fact. I don't think you give that half as much time if it's not Danny DeVito, who,
No,
if
agreed.
you remember back then too, I think he wasn't. I mean, his peak was in the '80s, early '90s.
Oh yeah, no.
But
At this
he's-
point, he's full character actor.
But he's
It's-
American legend. Like
a
this
legend.
is before Always Sunny,
It's
where
before
it kind
Always
of
Sunny,
becomes
where he's
like
just like, I'm gonna
postmodern.
fuck around,
Right.
like in this next part of my career.
And I wouldn't
Right.
say it's quite as cool as Bill Murray showing up in Rushmore, but it's a similar thing of like, oh, it's that dude we used to love doing like a smaller one-off
Well,
thing.
you know what Tim Burton said.
What's that?
You know, Danny DeVito plays
no,
the ringmaster.
wait, hold on. I just want to say, Griffin. No, I do not know what Tim Burton said.
You know what he said famously
Danny DeVito plays the
in his
ringmaster.
address to Congress.
And
Right.
Tim Burton's "We Must Tear Down This Wall." Danny DeVito plays the ringmaster in the upcoming Tim Burton Dumbo movie.
Yes, yeah.
And apparently Tim Burton just called him and said, Danny, we have to complete our circus trilogy.
Right.
Penguin,
That was the pitch.
Oh my God.
Right. Penguin, Big Fish,
Werewolf Man.
Dumbo.
Dumbo.
Is that true?
He's done 3 Top Hat movies with Danny DeVito leading
I
a
did
circus
not
of
realize that.
outcasts.
I did not realize that.
So
You
it's
think we'll
his
see his butt?
only way that he likes to use Danny DeVito, that and Rude Gambler.
Rude Gambler. Rude Gambler is the outlier.
Right, Mars
He
Attacks,
plays,
Rude
he plays a
Gambler.
character in Mars Attacks called Rude Gambler.
Danny DeVito is 4th billed above the title in Mars Attacks for a character who has no proper name and less than 6 lines of
It
dialogue.
just says, Tom Jones, it ain't unusual.
It ain't unusual.
It gets blasted to smithereens with a laser.
We already talked about this for 75 minutes in that.
Still funny, though.
I do think too. There's something that makes me giggle so hard about like. So you're at the funeral, which is beautiful to me.
Yeah.
And the giant, he's not 15 feet tall, but he's 7 feet tall.
Tall guy?
Yeah.
The twins are there. They're not conjoined, but they're twins. How much of that is true?
Lovely.
Danny DeVito is just a dude with scraggly hair.
He
With
does
both.
have the perspex cane, like
Yes.
the clear cane.
But you also go like, is this guy like 100 now?
There is.
You know, because
There
like
are some
'Cause
questions.
Ewan
of, like-
McGregor turned into Albert Finney. DeVito just stayed DeVito the whole time.
Right, and
As we think about it, all of them did.
right. Well, you go McGregor.
Buscemi's at least got gray hair, but yeah.
McGregor at the beginning of the film
is
is playing much younger. Like he's playing like high school,
right?
early
My
20s.
girlfriend was like, he's supposed to be 18. Like, I mean, and he's 32 at this point.
tall tale,
Yeah,
Can I just say something also that distracted me upon the rewatch?
Yeah.
That's just condescending and pithy.
Sure.
And I don't remember this from other films I've seen him in. Does Ewan McGregor, especially in those young man scenes in Big Fish, kind of weirdly have meth teeth? Something's going on.
He's got some scraggly teeth.
Like, was he a real heavy smoker or
Probably.
something?
I mean,
Probably,
I mean, not to double down on stereotypes about British
Yeah.
dental care, but it is poor.
but it's not
Finney
that.
has weird teeth too. Finney's got sort of like,
Yeah,
especially young man.
Finney grew up in he was born in like the 30s. Like that, Britain
Right.
genuinely had horrible dental care.
Yeah,
then,
I feel
yes.
like with
Albert
McGregor,
Finney's
though,
dentist was that guy in the bathroom at Port Authority. I'm sorry. I had to.
listen, I've seen McGregor
Holy
before
shit.
this and after this, and even later in the same
You think he got
movie.
his teeth done? Yeah. Huh.
But even later
Maybe.
on in Big Fish, but the
Yeah.
scenes, particularly like the
Interesting.
Daffodil Field scene, when he has that big grin on his
Yeah.
face, I was actually distracted where I was like, his teeth look like weirdly gray or something in a way they don't look for the rest of this entire movie.
Yeah, maybe he was just like chain smoking up a
Might have been.
storm during.
He could have
this.
been.
Yeah.
This is in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Right. This is that
Yeah.
period where they're like, I guess Ewan McGregor is like a major studio leading man.
Well, it's also, I mean, here he's being cast, I feel like, firmly in his Moulin Rouge role, where it's like, he is a very pretty sweetie pie.
and Down
Like,
with Love is the other one, where
And
it's
Down
like,
with
this is
Love.
him doing like high sort of
And let's
stylized.
quadruple
charm.
down on him doing an American accent, even though he is not good at it.
He's not.
And they
and
distinctly
adding in an Alabama twang
Yes,
this
yes.
time.
But see, I'm into that. Like, that's why I think this worked. I
Now,
think Ewan
David-
McGregor is awful at a normal American accent.
Not good.
I think he gets
He's
the
done
latitude.
it dozens of times.
I think the latitude he gets in this movie is he's playing a fantasy version of an actor already doing an over-the-top Southern drawl.
Yeah, you're giving him the laugh.
Now, can I?
am.
I'm going to say something since we're on the topic
Crudup
of
doesn't
the
have a
Southernness.
Southern accent.
Since we, I know,
No,
doesn't even
Crudup
try.
just
He's just, yeah.
sounds like MasterCard ads.
Crudup
He's
is playing
so
it-
in MasterCard
He
ads.
is so
from-
underplaying it, except for any scene where he has to like pick up a phone or do some boring business. And that I'm like, Crudup, chill out. Just
Yeah,
pick up the
it's a
phone like a
weird
regular
performance.
person.
I
On the
remember-
rewatch, I
yeah.
can admit it's a weird. Like
He does just not seem like a human being.
scenes where his intonation is abnormal to the degree you can't believe that Tim Burton didn't pull him aside and go like, speak like a normal fucking human being. What are you doing in my movie?
We were saying before we started recording that the thing, and I feel like I've heard him say this in interviews, especially at this time period, this was like his game he liked to play with himself, was he would like look at a normal line of dialogue and try to figure out the weirdest way to say it.
That Crudup said that?
Yeah. That
And
where
people
he's
wonder
said
why
that?
Billy Crudup
Is that- yeah,
didn't
that's a
have
true-
a movie
he
star
would actually
career.
say that.
Right.
Right. And it's not even like a Nicolas Cage thing where it's like, I want to find the most interesting take on my character that's unexpected. He was like, I will look at a line and try to break down what the obvious syntax would be and then put the emphasis on the wrong words and try to make it sound natural. And it's like just too much work, dude.
He
like,
sucks. Okay, here's my
yes,
problem
I
with
think
the
it
movie.
kills the
Okay,
ending.
here
He's
is.
good in the end.
You just said the sentence. Here is my problem with the movie. I'm excited for this.
Because, you know, like it's that I need to be a little on his side, and I am at no point on his side The whole movie is about a shithead son coming home to his dad
and judging
being
him.
like, you fucking asshole with your stories. And you're like, what else did the dad do? And he's like, I don't know. He wasn't around a lot. And you're like, that's it? That's all you're mad about?
You charmed
This guy's-
everybody and made them have fun at my wedding with your fucking speech that charmed the room.
Like, this is, I have to be on your side for 2 hours?
So here's my take.
Do you? You weirdly don't. More than any other movie I've ever seen, you, the actual hero, and by the John August script notes definition of the hero,
Right.
you don't have to worry about this person at all.
I kind of agree with you because it is
But that's
amazing.
a-
The movie
it's
ends.
a flaw.
And the movie's moral is kind of like, relax. Your dad
Lightened up.
Yeah, wasn't so
and
crazy.
Once he gets to him telling the story, suddenly Crudup is just in the pocket,
He-
unfussy,
he-
not overplaying it,
right.
doing it well.
He knows to sort of show up for that scene.
Right.
Like he's not an
And
idiot.
that's all
He knows
like,
this is important.
pretty tight
Right.
close up, and he's killing that. When I was 14 and I was all in on this movie, that performance worked for me. When I watch it now and I have my troubles, I think they mostly come from the fact that I have such a hard time dealing with Crudup. Because even like Cotillard, you're so much on board with.
I forgot-
She is so,
fully forgot she
so
was in this
charming.
movie.
This
She's
is her
very
first American
charming.
film.
And
Yes.
her linking up with the dad immediately
Well, that's
also
the thing.
underlines
She
how
immediately
much.
turns on him.
And she- and she
She's like,
immediately-
this is the guy you were complaining
You
about?
complaining about this guy forever? Oh, I could like turn
This
off.
guy is
turn
on
off the
death's
TV.
door.
Turn
and
off
he's
the
so
TV.
charming. Yes.
Yeah, pour a cup of warm cocoa and listen
Yeah.
to these guys' yarns.
Yeah.
Hey, dickhead, have you not noticed that your dad is played by Albert Finney? You lucky son of a bitch.
Now, can I say something that I think, Griffin, you'll agree with? And
Yeah.
David, I have a feeling might infuriate you
Okay.
based on what you've said and because of your role in your job as a cultural
Sure.
commentator.
Okay. Mm.
I thought this when I first saw it. And even in the rewatch, I stand by it. Is I was watching this movie and its dedication towards being sort of a Southern movie, the Southern exaggerator, this, kind of this archetype of that I think very much of the American South, of the tall tale.
He
the
literally
yarn.
brings back the Deliverance Kid. You know the banjo guy in this movie is the kid from
Is that
Deliverance.
true?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That being said, when I watched this movie, I was like, oh, Huckleberry Finn, To Kill a Mockingbird,
Sure.
Big Fish.
You're putting it all the way up there.
Yeah.
The idea of the kids who get themselves so worked up about Boo Radley, and sure, Boo Radley is this
That's the
recluse,
tradition that the
but he's a
story is
damaged
in.
guy with a good heart. Huckleberry
mad
Finn,
about
who
it.
tells these tales and lies to get, and Tom Sawyer even more so maybe.
Watch out for that kid.
Telling the lies to get what he
trouble.
wants, but he's also like a devil-may-care charmer.
Sure.
It's an
Right, 'cause-
archetype I love that I feel like, oh, has there been a cinematic entry into that?
I don't think
As much
so.
as
No,
Albert
because
Finney's
it's
character.
tricky. Like,
tricky.
and in this movie,
And the great Southern novels, right?
a lot of the great,
Yes.
I mean, there's Southern Gothic, and this is sort of the opposite of that. It's more the sort of Southern fairy tale stuff
Right.
where you're like, can we talk about what's going on? And you're like, and the movie's like, that we got to put that over there. We can't talk about it. We can't talk about reality. Let's talk about like these lovely, sort of magical communities and like the trees, the
You
weeping
did say
willows.
we have to talk about Spectre.
We got to talk about
We gotta
Spectre.
talk-
What the fuck is going on in Spectre?
I just want to say, Chris.
There's some rules
good
that
or
they
is it
don't
evil?
mention.
Is it good or evil?
Well, that's what I kind of like about it. You're talking
I do
about
too.
that it's like
But
there's
I think the
something weird
movie
in this
should
town, and
dig a little deeper in the second
once he
half.
goes back, sure.
When she's saying, like, you're saying this town's not going to change, I'm like, right, let's talk about it. But
Yeah.
then they just don't kind of don't talk.
I just
about
want to say, Chris, because you're such a good storyteller, and you were at this point so well oiled in when to take your dramatic beats in any sort of story you're telling or point you're making. When you were building up that defense, I thought you were genuinely going to say, "Big Fish, Huckleberry Hound."
Ooh.
You took a long beat in between, and I
Ooh.
thought that was going to be your defense, was relating this to Huckleberry Hound.
Wow.
And I was strapped in, but I didn't know if you could land
I
that
wish.
plane.
I wish I had landed that punchline.
Huckleberry.
Griffin, do you know anyone? Because you have known me pretty much since I started performing. Before
Yeah.
we were friends.
Yes, I was a big fan of yours from the time you started performing.
Does it make sense to you? I feel like I don't know clearly in terms of legend building with a wink and a nod. Is there any comedian who came out of New York that has done that more than me in an Ed Bloom-esque way?
No, and I didn't even realize because we just sort of threw to you.
I sort of am an Ed Bloom-esque guy who knows how to tell a story that's true and leave out all the context.
Right.
That's pretty much all my stand-up,
Yeah.
and everybody who started liking me 10, 12 years ago, that's what they liked about me.
And I literally, like, the same year that I'm, like, seeing Big Fish 8 times in theaters, my friend and I are scouring the UCB website to figure out any show that you're in, because I'm trying to explain to people, like, this guy has these crazy stories that don't make sense.
Sure.
Like, I
then
don't
they
understand
kinda
what his
do.
life is
Right.
in between these stories.
Right.
In the Big Fish kind of way.
Like,
Just like,
you guys would be fascinated by this. So there's a story we covered for Weird New Jersey. It's in the woods of Northern Virginia.
Mhm.
People for many decades have been telling tales of someone called the Bunny Man, who's a man who dresses in a pink bunny suit
Sure.
and attacks people with an axe.
Oh.
Some people say that he's an escapee from a lunatic asylum. Some people say that he killed all these rabbits and stitched together this really fucked up, not pink, like fucked up looking bunny suit
Right.
and all this stuff. And it's a great story. It's a great story. But what I love the most about it is you can find a newspaper article from the early 70s where there were two people making out in a car in a half-built condo development. And a man in a bunny suit came charging out of the woods, waving a hatchet around, yelling something about they shouldn't be developing this area. This is farmland.
Uh-huh.
And kind of threw the hatchet at the car and ran away. Clearly like a maniac.
yeah.
But it was real on some level.
Sure.
He didn't kill dozens of people in the woods.
Right.
And
But
that's
there
the
was a
type of
crazy-
story I've always been in love with, is there's a kernel of truth. That's the type of story I always try to tell in my comedy.
Yeah.
And my wife always gives me shit about this, where she's like, the story you're telling is true, but it's not true.
She's crud up. She's like, give me the context.
She's not crud up because she's not a fucking stick in the mud denying who she is and where she came from for totally arbitrary, unexplained reasons.
Yeah.
But she, especially since we got married and now sometimes the stories involve her,
Right.
she has held my feet to the fire a little bit more of like, if you leave out the context that involves me, it might make me look crazy or severe in ways I
Sure.
wasn't.
Sure.
I love a good lie that's not a lie.
Yeah. Well, and I think
And this movie's a tribute to that. And I don't know if there's another one that
I think
Not
that's
in
the thing.
recent
The
memory.
themes, what this movie is about, is something I am so in on. You know, what I think is such rich, fertile territory about our relationship to stories.
Sure.
And how we process the truth and why we mythologize things.
And that makes so much sense that John August later went on to start Script Notes as
Right.
well.
The other scene in this movie that I think is great and doesn't get enough credit is the Robert Guillaume scene where he tells Billy Crudup the
I
story.
was telling Ben
That scene's a
about
masterstroke.
that scene.
That's
That's
scene's
John
so
August's
good.
Probably the
smartest
turning
screenwriting
point.
move.
Probably
Yes.
the turning point
Right.
towards
Crucial
the ending. That being said, did rewatch it and think to myself, in a very weird way, and I have to assume it's because of like racial politics in America, has an actor ever, how would I say it? Because I have great respect. Has there ever been an actor more criminally underutilized throughout the course of his career than Robert Guillaume?
Robert Guillaume, right.
He's always
yeah.
playing like an ancillary.
Yes.
In
And
movies,
he's
yes.
the fucking best.
Yeah,
And
even
in
when he
TV,
got his own TV show, it was still kind of like, well, the premise is that he's sort of ancillary to the main family.
Right.
Like Benson, that was his role.
Yeah.
But no, one of those guys who's criminally underutilized, and you watch him in this, and you're
You
just
will
like,
watch anything
what a
that man
fucking
says.
elegant actor.
Like,
Like
He's
you're
an
just
elegant
like,
actor.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous scene. I do like it is a scene where he has to sit down with a fucking grown ass man who's about to have a child and be like,
Right.
the value of these kinds of stories is that they make things a little more interesting. And Billy Crudup is like an atomic bomb just went off. Like this is you're a grown man,
Right.
Understand that? How hard is that to understand? I still think that scene is so good.
So the Crudup thing is obviously like what the movie struggles with now. Not exclusively, but what like makes the movie lumpy, right? And I had this realization watching it last night where I was like, this movie has sort of the opposite of what worked so well in Black Panther.
Okay,
Ride me out on this
keep
one, okay?
Keep going.
Which is that, like, Black Panther, the thing that blows my mind is that Coogler was like, I'm going to take my personal experience,
Yes.
my thoughts and feelings, put it into the villain.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know the audience is automatically going to be on Black Panther's side because he's the hero of the movie and he does heroic things.
Sure.
I'm going to try to invest everything that I believe in into a character who then on top of that does villainous things so that the audience cares about the villain because I'm putting my heart and soul into that character. so that he feels like a fully rounded thing and not a plot device or stakes or something like that.
Right.
I think this movie has a weird thing where Tim Burton is making this movie after his father has died, when he's about to become a dad. He said that he had a terrible relationship with his father, in a sense that his father just was like, I don't get it. Why are you drawing so many circles around the eyes, Tim? You know? His father wasn't mean, but was just like,
just the fundamental
I openly
disconnect,
don't understand my son.
I had a kid, and the kid's just weird, and I don't know what to do with
Why
him.
doesn't he want to play catch?
Right.
And he died, and he was having all these sort of mixed emotions about it, on top of that he's becoming a father, and he's trying to figure that out. And he gets the script, and it hits him like a ton of bricks. But I think to Tim Burton reading the script, weirdly, Billy Crudup is his father, where he has contempt for the fact that the guy doesn't get it. Whereas most people...
Come live in the real world.
I think most people who would make this film, most directors would be like, well, obviously the relatable human character is the son, and the father's a fabulist, and you have to slowly over the course of the movie get the audience on board with the father.
Right.
And Tim Burton is so charmed by the father because the way the father makes his world around him is exactly what Tim Burton wants to fucking do with his art, and the son is just some pill. You know?
Now,
so I don't think he's openly like, I hate this fucking guy, but I think it seeps into the movie combined with Billy Crudup being such an antagonistic actor.
Now, Griffin, I think there might be something there. That's theory A.
Okay.
It's father stuff. Is there any world in which you might buy that it's a very similar thing, except instead of Billy Crudup representing Tim Burton's doubting father, this entire movie was made as a reaction and commentary to how America received Planet of the Apes.
That's theory.
And Albert Finney is the Tim Burton yarn spinner, and Billy Crudup represents all of America, who represented
audience of America,
who absolutely rejected his most recent yarn.
Right. Or Billy Crudup could also just represent like the studio system.
Right.
Like Billy Crudup represents Hollywood, and
Is he
he's just like
making some commentary in the same way that I always felt like Chasing Amy made some commentary about Clerks and Mallrats.
Right.
Hey, Blank Check listeners, I'm Adam Kempenar.
And I'm Josh Larson.
We're the hosts of Film Spotting,
which is basically Blank Check, except in Chicago.
That's not true.
We both talk about movies.
Sure, but we're not very funny.
But the movie thing.
That's the same. Also, long shows.
In-depth reviews and interviews.
Right. Ethan Hawke, Paul Schrader, and Bo Burnham were all on last year, plus top 5 lists and other stuff every Friday since 2005.
Ryan Johnson said that nice thing about us once.
A force for good in the universe.
He probably regrets saying that.
Too late. We're keeping it. Film Spotting, wherever you get your podcasts.
Have a good show, Griffin and David.
The clear thing is that, you know, in this movie, Tim Burton is relating to both versions of Edward Bloom.
Sure.
Because that's the kind of world he wants to create around him. And Billy Crudup represents everyone who hasn't gotten Tim Burton in his life.
That is fair. And that's what I think I've never thought about it.
The audience surrogate.
That's what I'm saying is the problem with this movie.
Tim Burton hates the main character of this movie.
Right. I'm saying it's the opposite of the Black Panther thing, where he hates the audience.
Let me give you some context.
Yeah.
I want to give you some further context. Just about the movie that I feel like sort of matters to the commercial discussion of Tim Burton. One is that
Ben is also making the face of someone who absolutely does not give a shit about Big Fish.
Ben does not like this movie.
Ben has not said a word. He doesn't want to get into this conversation.
Zoning out to a degree where he was watching a different movie in his head rather than even think about Big Fish.
Assassin's Creed was playing.
Oh, yeah.
Ben has seen the Michael Fassbender Assassin's Creed movie 10 times.
Definitely.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to call it out. So you were saying.
One thing, as you said, is that Nicholson was initially going to play this dad role.
Right.
They reworked the script to give it more dad because the script. Finney's actually not in like a ton of the movie.
No, they also for a period of time thought it was going to be Nicholson with CGI de-aging and makeup playing both versions,
which is fucking
which
insane.
would have been a nightmare.
I would pay $100 to have
Remember what Jack Nicholson looks like at this time, and imagine them trying to be like,
"You're going to need
I'm
a lot of
college
CGI."
student.
Let's bring him back to a pre-Chinatown age.
I'm the star quarterback of my football team in high school. It's something's gotta give era Jack Nicholson.
Right. He's so eventually and Nicholson obviously is a frequent, knows Burton well.
Yes.
But for whatever reason, that just, I don't know, that falls apart and they get to Finney and
after that, John August resets and he goes, I'm not going to do this script.
They
it's
threw
based
out
on,
the new script and they go, let's go back to the original script that blew everyone away.
Right.
Let's throw out this revamp thing. Right.
Really?
Here's the other thing. As you say, Burton was like the script. Planet of the Apes had been this big mishigas that he was kind of not into.
Yeah.
Famously, when asked if he wanted to make another one, he said, "I'd rather jump out a window."
Right. And the sense is that's the first movie that he feels like he lost control of.
Sure. So he says, "I want to make a smaller movie." The budget of Big Fish is $70 million.
Yes.
Yes. What?
This was an expensive movie.
Hugely expensive.
I mean, you got
They
to
built sets.
You have to make a giant appear 15 feet tall for extended periods of time.
You got Spectre. I assume that's an entirely constructed.
There's so many locations. There's so many time periods.
They've got like that big house that gets, that they push.
There's a lot of stuff.
Did they make it back?
No.
That's shocking to
They
know.
might have made it back worldwide.
I know it did really well on home video.
Whatever. I mean, no one's, whatever.
Yeah.
Fuck. But like, this is the Burton problem where everyone's like, well, his smaller movies don't do as well, so then he feels compelled to make the bigger stuff. No, he can't make small movies. When he's making a small movie,
Big Eyes is a small movie.
Yeah, Big Eyes was fairly cheap, right?
Cost like $9 million, $10 million.
You would have to work hard to make Big Eyes expensive. It's
but he could have done it if you let him.
But this is your smaller movie. It made $66 million in America.
Right.
To me, watching this movie, that's what I would expect this movie to make.
Yeah.
You don't watch this movie and think like, wow, America really whiffed on that.
Well, but here's the thing.
This wasn't a sensation.
I think their big swing is, what if Tim Burton can make his Forrest Gump?
Exactly. I was just going to say, let's not forget we're only a few years out from Forrest Gump.
Impossible to replicate and insane that it was such a big movie.
Agreed, but
I'm sure you guys have talked about it.
I mean, it comes up in weird ways, but as recently as like, Curious Case of Benjamin Button is clearly like, can we do Forrest Gump again?
Sure.
Ben Stiller in interviews was like, Walter Mitty is me trying to do Forrest Gump.
Stop trying, guys.
Anomalous success.
I haven't rewatched Forrest Gump since it came out. Have you guys watched it recently?
That thing is a fucking slog in my opinion.
My sister is 21.
And again,
she
has
watched
a nice
it for
ending.
the first time a year ago, and she went, what the fuck is that?
Well, first you have to just sit them down and be like, let me tell you about baby boomers. That has to be the first conversation where it's like, you don't understand. They were all 30 years old.
They were passing us, my generation, the torch in a weird way.
Exactly. They were like 30 to 50 years old. They'd all watched the fucking moon landings and lived through Vietnam. Like, you don't understand.
This
movie was hitting them
albums.
Exactly.
Yeah, their lives were like a weirdly negative base level with moments of cultural victory.
Yes,
right. And like Forrest Gump is just like, what if a guy lived in every memory that you have of your childhood, essentially, and walked through it.
But
and then
it's
at the
also,
end he has a kid and the kid's Haley Joel Osment.
It's this weird epic that is so long, so expansive, so expensive, and so oddly pitched in terms of tone.
I mean, it's being there, it is just being there, in my opinion.
But it's being there done with, like, the self-importance of, like, Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes,
that's the thing. So I think they were, like...
Epic. But then also it's, like, kind of goofy and, like, about a guy who's special.
Right.
And you're like, what?
Wild.
Like, if they release this movie now, Tom Hanks would go to jail. He would be convicted and sent to jail.
It would be regarded as the most tasteless choice.
Exactly.
Right, the hippie gets AIDS. Like, everything about that movie now is just like...
Bubba Gump? You think that would fly in 2019? You think that's going to fly?
Wouldn't fly, would try that.
The restaurants are still around, though, right?
Yeah.
They are.
Hugely popular.
Grandfather claused that one in, huh?
Well, because people are like, I like shrimp. Like, I like to eat shrimp. I got no beef with it. As long as I don't have to be exposed to a lot of Bubba Gum.
I went there, and on the menu, it actually says, their catchphrase is actually, don't think too hard about it.
Do you know, though,
but
like,
you're right.
Bubba
Big
Gump.
Fish is being pitched
Don't think too hard about it.
Do you
in
know,
that Forrest Gump zone of like, can we make a sort of family-friendly but more adult sort of epic about...
And you go through American
fatherhood
history,
in America,
not in the same sort of like touchstone way. But do you know, like the book that Forrest Gump is based on has a plot line where he like goes to the moon?
Yeah, and there's a
like,
sequel where he
like
opens a company.
absurdist.
There's a sequel called Gump Incorporated where he like opens a factory and it's about like capitalism.
Right.
But the book is a little more venomous, I think.
That's
like,
the thing. The book is like I think closer to
Venomous
like
towards whom?
Everyone.
America.
Right.
Like, it's kind of like fucking America.
I think the book is like fifth-rate Vonnegut, and then they took it and made it into like a really
life is like a box of chocolates.
Sort of like saccharine family.
Is. Like,
and everyone loved it.
I want to see this 8 times.
It was like the third highest grossing movie in history. Like it outgrossed Star Wars at the time.
I remember my parents came home, and my parents are not very sentimental
Yeah.
Sure.
or emotional people. And they sat me down and said, we just saw a movie and you have to go see it
This is important.
immediately.
Wow.
Tom Hanks had won Best Actor the year before, and they were like, well, it put us between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
We cannot not give him the Oscar for Forrest Gump.
Once again, he would go to jail
Yes.
in 2019. They'd be like, what are you doing?
Is he like me?
Like if he came on set and did that, like someone would call HR.
Yeah.
Like Tom Hanks is like talking in this goofy voice and I'm very uncomfortable.
Right.
Right.
Do you
Giving
think
strangers chocolate.
Do you think that at the funeral at the end of Big Fish, that Billy Crudup approached a certain character and was like, "Hey, I think I've heard about you. Are you Mr. Soggy Bottom?" And then Soggy Bottom had to be like, "Yeah."
I shot your dad. Does he like catch the bullet? The bullet is not mentioned.
Clips
again.
him. I think he clips him. I think
Clips
it's
him.
It's a very low caliber gun.
Sure. I mean, it
Just
was
a silver-
inside the belly.
That's
the
a tummy
big
gun.
belly of a
on,
little
Chris.
person.
And you
Chris,
just
your
got to
standard
deliver
tummy
the
gun.
silver. You're not trying
Yeah.
to kill your friend.
Right,
You're
it's
just
a
trying to get
delivery
that silver in there.
Yeah.
It's basically like a high-grade hypodermic needle to
Right.
inject some silver.
But can we talk about Spectre?
Yeah,
Yes,
I want to
let's talk
hear,
about it.
because you seem like
Well, it's all right. So after
a
his
very strange
childhood
combination
with
of
the witch,
frustrated
the
flummox.
witch is sort of the first big story, but the second big
Miley
story,
Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus,
Her
is in the
first
game
screen
there.
appearance is the
Mhm.
little girl who goes to the witch's house with them.
Yeah, she's credited by her birth name, which is Destiny Cyrus.
Right.
is that true?
That is
That
Miley
is
Cyrus.
Totally true.
Edward, don't, is Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, completely.
It
wild.
also, I just want to say the witch sequence has one of my favorite jokes in the movie, if you can call it that,
Go
which
ahead.
is when all the boys start cursing to show that they're cool, and the one kid goes, screw.
yeah.
A very young man moment.
Yes.
Screw.
Screw.
But then, and the second story is the giant and him sort of coaxing the giant to like
Be cool.
be cool and have an adventure with him, right? Like walk down the road with him, right?
Right. A man born with medical conditions that cause him to have the angles of a Tim Burton drawing.
Right.
Really, a really striking person to look at who died not long
Matt
after
McGrory,
this
yeah.
movie. Yeah, Matt
Yeah.
McGrory.
Right.
Well, I
yeah.
realized I looked him up upon my rewatch.
He's tiny.
He was a Howard Stern whackpacker.
Oh, really?
yeah.
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 He was in the whack
He's
pack.
also in the House of Thousand Corpses movie.
He's 7 feet tall.
Yeah, he's a huge man.
7'6". He had the longest toe. That was his Guinness record.
Longest
Which
toe.
imagine that. Imagine being, I don't know.
How long was that toe?
Let's find out. Longest toe, Guinness World Record. Here we go.
You've tried to talk about Spectre at least 11 times.
And not the James Bond movie. Let's see, 5 inches long. 5 inches long.
5-inch toe. That's a big toe.
That's a big toe.
That's a big ass toe.
It's a big toe. I mean, I'm surprised it
Yeah.
hasn't been beat, but it's a big toe.
Yeah.
He's still on there.
Wow.
This is today's Guinness. Anyway,
They hit that fork in the road.
they hit the fork in the road where it's like take the easy path or the scary path.
And I know of one guy who went this way and he's never been seen again.
Right.
Northern
which
Winslow.
is the poet, right?
poet.
Mhm.
And Edward's like, well, I feel like I should take the more dramatic path, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, is that his whole reasoning?
Right.
And he goes into this
He's
town.
a man who believes that he's destined to live a great life.
Right. And he knows when he's going to die, so he's not afraid of
He's
death.
not afraid of that. This isn't how I go.
And so he wanders in, and what does he find? This weird, spooky town that's kind of like off the map,
Barefoot town.
barefoot. Your shoes get thrown on a wire.
Little Hamlet. Yeah.
It's got fairy lights. It kind of looks like a sort of Instagrammable wedding spot. You know
Now
what I
it
mean?
does.
Like
Very
now,
much. Yeah.
It would have a hashtag.
now it would have a hashtag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
would.
you get like mason jar lemonades
Yes.
and stuff there,
Yes.
right?
Right.
But it's like this presided over by Loudon Wainwright III,
As of course.
of course,
Obviously.
who's sort of like the mayor.
Yeah.
Is he?
Kind of.
Missy Pyle, who's sort of
Yeah.
becoming a Burton regular now.
Right. And the second she appears in this movie, you're like, God, he must have been so happy when he found her.
Yeah, when he found out that she existed.
Right, like this is like a Catherine O'Hara level, like you belong in a Tim Burton
100%.
movie.
I love
performance
Missy
energy.
Pyle.
I do too. Missy Pyle rule.
And you gotta, what are the rules? You can't leave. You gotta
Yeah.
have bare feet.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do.
Most people wear white, but that's not 100% of
No,
They
them.
wear-
even the water is sweet.
The people wear a lot of white clothes. They've
Yeah.
also got a lot of white skin, I'm noticing here. Oh,
sure.
wait. The
You-
whole town gathers and there's all white people. What's
You
going on?
Seem to lose your abilities at poetry once you're
Yeah.
there.
Sure.
He's been stuck
Implication
on
Well,
that
because
if
there's
you-
nothing to do. It's like total stasis,
Spectre
right?
is really great.
You're right.
which is
Wait,
really
what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I wonder if that applies to all skills or just that character's poetry.
It seems to be a low ambition town. I mean, people aren't really working.
You get in,
It's sort
you
of like a
forget who you are.
parody of a small town.
Yeah.
But it is also a parody of like a segregated town.
Sure.
And the movie just kind of glances against that and doesn't know what to doesn't want to deal with that. Doesn't deal with that.
Yeah.
And instead it just sort of becomes this parable of like, you know, paradise is what you make of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like this place is ostensibly paradise, but Ewan McGregor, you know, Ed's not ready for it.
Right. I don't want to settle.
And, you know, when he gets back to it, it's too late. And like he lost his chance at a pair, right? You know, like
Sure.
paradise is more than a place. You have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's also like this weird white people town in Alabama.
But then also,
What's going on?
Sure. But then also, I mean, the Helena Bonham Carter scene is like, no, it was just like a town. It was like a small town.
Of course,
that wasn't
that-
very sustainable. And to
Right.
him, it just seemed idyllic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing about this movie that I wonder if you two think about based on where you grew up, which is I think so much of this movie is also about choosing to be worldly when you're from a small place.
Right.
And what that means
Sure,
and
sure,
how
sure.
attainable that really is.
Which is tough because Dave and I both spent our entire lives in New York City. We never
Yeah.
lived anywhere else. So,
Whereas I'm from northern New Jersey, a
Right.
place that a lot of people look down on and make fun of.
Sure.
Not in the
Sure.
same ways, but I feel like you think about the Deep South and people have some cast aspersions.
For sure.
And when you're from a place like that,
Making the decision to leave,
but also still have pride,
of course.
when you live in a small world, maybe you can construct a bigger world for yourself in legend, and that's okay.
Sure.
There was a lot of stuff like that I found really fascinating and kind of beautiful. And I wonder about
Yes.
your thoughts on it.
well, see, I didn't have the small town thing, but I definitely, like, from a very young age was obsessed with this notion of, like, I want to live a quote unquote great life in the sense of, like, the breadth of the life and, like, the experiences I accumulate
Right.
and going to different places and putting myself in different environments. I mean, it's a lot of the stuff that you talk about where, you know, you're sort of self-mythologizing of you putting yourself in all these crazy situations. There's value in that, you get the stories out of them. But I also think there's the thing of just, like, I want to push myself into environments I should not organically be finding myself
Right.
in, into working jobs that aren't innately the job I should be doing, you know? Like, that sort of sense of Edward Bloom as this guy who's just like, I need to live as much life as I possibly can. The greatness is in the sort of, like, the
But he did it.
variety of it.
And this is where I agree with Crudup.
Yeah.
Whereas Crudup is like, wait a second, you lived an ordinary life. You went to college, you met my mom, then you were a traveling salesman and you made money, but you weren't around. And that's it. And you bought a house. Like, what's so fucking great about that? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying I fully agree with Crudup,
Yeah.
but I get that Crudup is sort of like, I've grown up and I've realized my dad was just a guy who, like, had an ordinary-ish life.
But also to that guy, it's like, even if half the stuff is bullshit, there are some interesting experiences there.
Absolutely.
If
Right.
your
And
dad
then
told you, like,
the
did I ever
twist
tell
of
you
the
I worked at a
movie-
circus for 6 months? You'd be
Right.
like, whoa, you worked at a circus
Yeah,
for 6
crazy.
months?
What are you talking
You served
about?
in the war, you were a traveling salesman,
Exactly.
you met these people.
Well, that's also why, as you bring it up and as we talk it out, the one moment with Crudup, outside of the ending with the dad, the one moment where I start to really sympathize with him is the scene with Helena Bonham Carter when he goes, he's having an affair.
Right. That's
right,
the explanation
right.
he's
Right.
looking for his
That's
father.
that's
It's one of the only
the
ones where he's
unspoken
not just a
thing that
stick
he
in the mud.
finally
Yeah.
speaks. Right.
And
right.
maybe the movie would have been well served for something like that to come out a little earlier versus just him going, I don't like you with all your.
But
If
you
it was-
understand his resentment at that moment.
You
Right.
understand it really for the first, and I would say only time,
Yeah.
the depths of it. Way more than your dad just crushed a wedding speech and you're being an
Right.
asshole. Who doesn't want that?
He's so upset about that.
And he's
guy.
like,
He
I heard
really hates that he showboated at the wedding.
Yeah, and
But-
which is also, I get it, you're making it about you, but they didn't, that wasn't nailed that hard. But that idea of him going, oh, my dad might have actually been, it's not just that my dad's an exaggerator, it's that he might have been a real shitty dude.
we
and he
kind
might
of
be
feel like
lying
this
Here's
about
the
movie
thing
needs in the
about
first
this,
10
and this
minutes
is-
a scene where Billy Crudup says,
To
I
Marianne
just
Cotillard.
always assumed
Yes.
that my father must be covering for
He
something.
says it to his wife. And that's my fix for this movie,
Right.
is like, you need to build that in sooner because when he says it, it's kind of a powerful moment when he says it to Helena Bonham
And then
Carter.
when she
'Cause you're
responds
like,
and is like,
oh,
we're
shit.
jumping right into
Right.
it.
But
You're
then
like-
you already know, like, now this movie's been going on too long and we're too in on Finney for that to be the twist.
Because that's the problem, is that Burton loves the Finney character. He loves the life that this guy's living. He doesn't want
Right.
it to be questioned.
Whereas the story Helena Bonham Carter tells is basically a story of like, no, we didn't have an affair, but we did have this relationship that kind of like just sort of
was intimate, emotionally intimate.
Right.
Right.
Like that was in the air
Yeah.
and eventually we didn't really act on it and that was that. But
Yeah.
it was a weird moment in your dad's life
Yeah,
where
sure.
he was maybe pondering
Yeah.
like, oh, should I Spectre? Should I, you know,
Right.
like, and the movie kind of, but like if you had built that in a little more, I feel like it'd be even more powerful when he, you know, when they almost kiss and he says no.
Sure.
And instead it's more just a fairy tale where he's like, no, you know, Jessica Lange's the only lady for me. And you're like, all right, well, okay.
Right.
Yeah, Jessica Lange, the definition of doing a lot with a little.
Doing a lot with a little.
Like,
and
she's
again,
got, like,
as an
4
Oscar
lines
watcher,
in
everyone
this?
was
Yeah.
like, Lange's getting a
It's a
nomination.
comeback,
Look at her.
right.
She's luminous. And instead, like, she is great in the movie, just as you say,
Right.
anytime she's in it, but she's barely.
Yeah.
I do have to ask, and I feel like this is something we'll cover at some point. Did it get any nominations?
One. Best
Best
score.
score, that's it.
That's it.
And people thought, like, even when this movie came out and it didn't, okay, so it's not going to be the runaway sensation, people were like, but probably like Finney.
And like some design elements,
Design and
you
effects,
know.
that almost
All
feels
that
like
sort
an
of stuff.
aggressively
It felt kind
anti-Tim
of backhanded.
Burton.
And it's weird also that this is the first and only Danny Elfman Tim Burton score to get nominated.
Right.
Like, he had done so many iconic scores with Tim Burton. And then this movie, where people thought it would be an across-the-board Oscar player, they're like, we'll finally
Did it
give Elfman
win?
a
Did
thing.
it win for score?
No.
It lost. What so 3, that's the, well, you know what? We'll get to it.
Mean, really should have won for this, though. I
Globes.
mean, this year, and also because it's like this was the last big bite at the apple he had.
That Finney never won an Oscar is a shame. He
Right.
also never went to the Oscars and thought they were stupid.
Sure.
So, you know, props to him for that.
Pretty rad.
I had forgotten he won the SAG for Aaron Brockovich, but did he not show up when he
was
won?
not at the Oscars. He's not at the Oscars.
For the SAG, he won, though.
Oh,
I'm
I don't
saying.
know. I don't think so.
I was trying to find a
People,
clip to
the
see.
SAGs were barely a thing back then.
It was literally,
It was
I think,
like a
the first
6-year-old
year. I
ceremony.
think it was
No.
the first
No,
year.
no, no.
Or
It's 95
second,
is the
third.
first.
Okay. Oh, Jesus.
Don't talk to an Oscar watch.
This
Look,
is
you
Stone
can
Cold
talk
Sins
Burton. I
over
can
here.
talk awards.
Stone Cold Sins.
Entering-
Born on those Oscar boards.
Entering this studio is a real exercise.
I fully cannot believe you ever deigned to do it. You are
I
a
feel-
busy man with things to do.
It's like I feel like I can just barely keep up,
Oh, sure.
and then there's moments where,
Where
it's
you're
just,
like, oh,
I'm left at the roadside.
Well, some people will. I've said this on the podcast, but some people will say like, "I'd listen to your podcast, but you're like speaking a foreign language." Like
Yeah.
if I turn it on, I just
I
don't
mean,
know what
this
you're
is
talking
why,
about.
not to get too insidery, the episode, JD Amato is one of the only other people I know who can keep up with conversations this insane.
Keep up. He's lapping us
Yeah.
up. You know, like He's on another
That's when
plane.
his track training comes in and he starts sprinting.
But I just want to say, the movie was ignored by the Oscars.
Yes.
But like the Golden Globes nominated for Best
Supporting
Picture
actor,
and for Finney.
picture, right.
The BAFTAs nominated for Best Picture for Finney.
Yeah.
Like all the other sort of precursors
Yeah,
were like,
it seemed like, right.
yeah. And I think it might have been one of those things where the Oscars don't like Burton. They don't. They
They don't.
never have.
They don't.
And also because the movie kind of flopped after
Yeah.
all the hype, maybe it was that sort of like, that thing's a stinker.
Burton has 2 Oscar nominations, and they're both for animated films.
Right. Yeah.
And they're for animated films that people don't like.
Yeah,
Which
it was
ones?
more like by
Frankenweenie and
default.
Corpse Bride.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's sort of like they have an animated feature category.
They have to fill out 5.
But
You
wait,
know.
not even for design and effect stuff for his earlier stuff?
I mean, a couple,
Batman won a production design Oscar.
2 of his
No-
films have won costume.
Yeah.
Right?
Such a nerd.
Sleepy
Anything
Hollow.
for no scissor hands?
No Scissorhands.
No
What-
Beetlejuice?
No. What? Right. Sleepy Hollow wins production design.
Mhm.
Alice in Wonderland weirdly wins. Is his most
Costumes, I
winning
think?
film.
Yeah.
Wins costumes and art direction.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Which is a
Yeah, you're
garish
right.
movie.
You guys don't.
It's a
You know
disgusting
this off
movie.
the top of your head.
Yeah, we're disgusting
Can I
people.
get, so
Throw us in jail.
my girlfriend
Send you
sidebar.
to Spectre.
Yeah,
Send
right.
us a Spectre. My girlfriend grew up watching Red Dwarf. I don't know if either of you ever watched
I love Red Dwarf. I grew up
did
in
not watch
England. Okay, I fucking grew up in England. Of course, I watched Red
Finally
Dwarf.
took it.
That thing was fucking incredible.
Right. Red Dwarf.
Red Dwarf is
rules.
like a silly sitcom set on a spaceship. Very, very like cult popular. Have
Right.
you ever heard
It's
of
like
it?
a
No.
like
heard
working
of it,
class
never seen it.
sanitation guy on a British spaceship who, as punishment, they put him in cryosleep, and he wakes up 3 million years later, and humanity is dead.
Okay.
And now he's stuck on a spaceship with a hologram and a computer
and a cat
and
person.
Do they-
a cat
Do
person.
they watch movies and make fun of them?
No, it's
very-
not Mystery
It
Science.
sounds
Also,
very similar. in
Pre-Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah.
Weird.
Like early tip of the 80s.
And it was one of those things that, like, just one of those British sitcoms that they would do like 4 episodes every couple years. You know, Red Dwarf
Right.
would come back and,
That
you know,
cool thing
Big
they're
gaps
allowed to
between
do in
seasons.
Britain.
where they're like, hey, yeah, we got them back together.
Yeah.
But also, like, the show weirdly has like a lot of plot and, like, by the end is quite convoluted.
Yes.
Like,
But they've done like 10 seasons over like 35 years.
How
Yeah.
come you're allowed to do that in Britain where it's like, hey, let's, I know we haven't made anything in 11 years for this one series, but let's do
do
an
it back
Easter
together.
special.
yes, holiday
Let's do an
specials.
Easter special for this thing
I
no
believe
one's
still
seen in
the
11
most watched
years.
television program in British history is The Only Fools and Horses, like a random Christmas special for Only Fools and Horses,
Wow.
which is like a like venerable sitcom
Yeah.
about 2 guys who are like, all right, well, you know, and like drive a van and do
Yeah.
odd jobs. Like
It's like they're Sanford and Son, right?
it's Sanford and Son. I mean, Sanford and Son is based on Steptoe and Son, which is a British
Oh,
sitcom.
right. Yes.
British sitcoms, man, they're the best.
This was the point I was going to make about Red Dwarf, okay? My girlfriend grew up watching Red Dwarf, and she was like, look, I don't know if you've ever watched this. I have really fond memories of it. I've been curious to rewatch it and see if it holds up. And she's like, you want to watch this with me? And I'm sitting there watching it, and she kept on feeling like, am I putting this on you, or are you not
Sure.
really
Are you
into
into this,
it?
or you-
And I was like, no, I'm like really into it.
Crichton rules.
Well, Crichton doesn't come until season 3.
That's
He's
true.
only in
That's true.
episode 1 of season 2, and then season 3 comes
Crichton's
proper.
fucking great though.
Crichton rolls. I agree. Crichton slaps. But we're watching the show, and she doesn't believe I'm into it. And then I start correcting her on facts. And she's like, what do you mean you're correcting me on facts? You've only watched 8 episodes of this show.
Sure.
And I grew up watching it, and I was like, when I get into something, I like,
Right, you're all in.
I can't half measure.
Yeah.
Like, you showed me 2 episodes, and then I spent 4 hours on the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
And then reading the links connected to the Wikipedia.
She must have felt good that you liked it.
She did. It was a nice
yeah, that's
moment.
like your version of a compliment, right?
But
It's
she,
like,
but she did say she
where
was
you're like, I'm so into the lore that now
Right.
I know more than you.
right. But she was like, you really do go hard
Right.
on shit,
Yeah.
huh?
Right. And I'm sure there was a part of her that was like, oh, cool, you've taken this from me.
You're mansplaining a show I
Yes.
watched with my father.
I
that her
introduced
only-
you to a thing that you're now looking down your nose at my lack of knowledge about.
Right.
I
Does
was
she
trying
like
to,
other
like,
British
casually be like,
sitcoms?
actually, Crane doesn't come until season.
Does she like other British sitcoms? Like, can
She's
I
more
talk to her about
sci-fi
like Father
person.
Ted? Okay,
I don't
so
think.
it goes.
She's a big fan of Blackadder.
Well, Blackadder fucking rules.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
the
know
greatest
as
of all.
much
That's the
British
top of the
sitcoms.
mountain.
We've been
Blackadder
talking
is
more
the
about-
top of the mountain.
Never
Talking
seen
more
it.
about British sitcoms.
You
She's
must
a big
have heard
sci-fi
of it though,
Oh,
like
of
Rowan
course.
Atkinson. You
Yeah,
know, and
yeah.
it's like there's only 4 seasons. Each one is better than the last.
Each
which
season
is
was
sort of-
25 years after the previous one.
And each season is set in a different period of British history with different characters played by the same actors, but the same dynamics.
He's like a type that keeps recurring
Yeah.
in history.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
So
like there's
sometimes
another
that type is
Blackadder.
in like
right.
the modern day police force. Sometimes that type is like
Well,
in
that's the Thin Blue Line.
Oh,
but
Now, can I tell you a Rowan Atkinson tangent?
please.
I once, in 2012, I sort of notoriously lost my mind. Fell off the wagon.
This was the Bonnaroo episode.
This was the Adderall stretch. of my
Okay,
life.
okay.
Are you making the show at this point?
Yes,
You're
yes.
making
You
the
can. There's a
Gethard show?
stretch of Gethard show on public access in 2012 where summer of 2012, you can watch me losing weight week by
Yeah.
week. You can
Yeah.
watch me.
Is that
getting
sort
more
of
gaunt
fairly
skeletal.
early in the run, or
Which random were we on at this point?
We're probably wrapping up on Andrew
Okay,
and
Sure,
the Melissa
right. Yeah,
era.
okay, right,
Thank you
right,
so much.
right,
Thank you so
right,
much. But I had a friend of mine at the end of that summer who's a filmmaker. You guys probably do you know Antonio Campos?
Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine. And Simon Killer was out doing the festival circuit.
Mhm.
And it was at a festival in Rio de Janeiro. And he pulled me aside and was like, dude, I think you're kind of going off the deep end. I'm going out of town. Why don't you just come to Brazil with me? And he wasn't like, and it's not like Rio is a place to lay low. He was just kind of
right? I don't think of that as like
No,
a chill place.
but he was just kind of like, you and I'll do some soul searching, talking, and if you want to party, we can party, and if you want to just like chill out and get back to being yourself, get back. But New York is not good for you. This is one of those stretches where we all have them, where New York is not good for you.
You just need to go off the grid for a little.
New York is be a
Yeah.
pressure cooker.
it's a
better
social
or worse.
thing as much as the city thing.
Yeah, I was dealing with a bad breakup. I was dealing with a bunch of bad decisions. All this stuff.
dealing with a rough random. I mean,
Yeah,
Andrew,
rough
very
random.
controversial random.
Rough random. Had to really help that kid. He's such a nice guy.
He's a nice boy.
Audience
Everyone
was
hated him. I
Shit on
remember
my
that.
own brother called in and like shit on a kid who was
Yeah.
20 years younger than
He's
him.
like
It's
in college.
my brother's like, get this fucking pretentious. I'm like, Greg, you're pushing 40, man.
He's a boy.
Get him off my fucking screen. So I
Just a kind
I go
boy.
to Brazil, and I mean, it's an epic journey. We have a male ballet dancer hand me a giant bag of cocaine in front of my friend's mother secretly. I have to decide if I'm going to do cocaine for the first time. It's crazy. We're partying in favelas. It's wild. It's like wild.
You robbed a bank and like with a big safe that you strapped to the back of a car.
Me and a
right.
guy named Rocket took down a guy named Little J. Like it was nuts. It was really nuts. Rewatched that last night, by
Good
the way.
movie.
One of the best movies to come out of my life.
Good
Anyway,
movie.
so Antonio has some family down there, and we go. His mom was in town because she was a producer on another film in the festival. We're with this family up at this mountaintop retreat. It's crazy. It's so beautiful. And he has this distant cousin who's like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen.
Okay.
And Antonio's mom decides she's going to be like human Tinder and just hook me up with her own relative. Like she's trying to pimp out her relative. She starts like really talking me up. And she starts telling everyone we meet that I am regarded in America as the next Woody Allen, that I'm as big as Woody Allen. She keeps telling everybody, this guy's a comedian. He's as big as Woody Allen. He's not on an international level, but in America,
Right.
he's big, which is not true.
It's undeniable.
And
She's
there's-
claiming that in
She's
America,
claiming-
undeniably,
not
you're
that
the
I am,
Arab guy.
not that I have a Woody Allen vibe, not that that could be a thing, that in America,
Right.
You are
I
a
am a-
venerable.
yes,
It's
an
sort of
Annie
just
Hall
any-
era Woody Allen level of fame. Not true. And this beautiful cousin of my friend's is sitting there, not speaking. I assume she only speaks Portuguese. I later find out this is because she was pretending to only speak Portuguese so as to not have to speak to me.
Sure.
At one
She
point,
knows about Woody Allen.
At one point, yes, she knew it before the rest of us.
Yeah.
At one point, when Antonio's mom tells this cousin, oh, this guy's actually a comedian in America, her face lights up. She turns to me and in perfect American accent English, she goes, "Oh my God, I love comedy so much.
Sure.
Have you ever met Mr. Bean?" And I said, "No." And she was like, "I love Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean is my favorite comedian ever." And she went on a very long rant about her love of Mr. Bean.
Sure.
And it did develop into a flirtatious thing between the two of us. Nothing ever happened. And we became Facebook friends.
But
And when she
Mr.
came back-
Bean is the glue holding it
Mr.
together.
Bean became this weird glue, but I've
Right.
never seen someone love Mr. Bean so much. Is Mr. Bean that worldwide beloved?
Yeah, it's insane.
I think it's one of those things where, like,
Really?
in America,
We've always rolled our eyes at him.
yeah, it's a little like
Because they
you
did
know,
like the
that's some
much
kid
later
shit.
Mr.
Right.
Bean's holiday sequel, and people are like, "Why are they making this?" And it made like $2 in America and $3 trillion worldwide.
She
But,
loved
like-
Mr. Bean so much to the point where
Yeah.
it almost got me a hookup.
Did she want to talk about Blackout, or was it just Mr.
Just Mr.
She's not a
Bean.
Rowan Atkinson.
She's not
fan.
saying
She's a
I like
She
Mr.
Rowan
didn't,
Bean.
I do
Atkinson.
not think she
Right,
knew
right,
the
right.
name Rowan Atkinson. She thought his name was like Fred Bean or something like that. She thought that was a real
Jimmy Bean.
documentary.
right?
She thought that was Harvey Bean.
I think,
But
that,
I mean,
like,
she was all of a sudden very, very open to
Wow.
hanging out with me.
Wow,
There you
because
go.
you knew from Bean.
And she was an artist, and I went to her art exhibit in Brazil, and it was her.
It was all oil paintings
No,
of Mr.
dude,
Bean.
you can't even imagine.
Really?
It was her doing videos of herself standing in abandoned, desolate places with a somber look on her face and having the video glitch in a loop over and over again, which me in 2012, my dream.
you're like,
woman.
we're cooking with gas.
a beautiful,
This is it.
a beautiful, mysterious Brazilian video artist who explores abandoned places and doesn't want to speak to me. That's my dream woman
Plus,
in
she's a
2012.
beanaholic.
Yeah, and she loves Mr. Bean.
She's getting high on that bean.
You have described my 2012
dropping that bean.
fantasy human.
But wait, but in the end of the day, you just left Rio.
I did. I left Rio.
That was
know.
your specter.
But then I came back together. I came back to America and immediately got together with my wife.
Sure. And everything sort of leveled out.
Yeah,
Right. I mean,
yeah.
this is your big fish. This
Well, I
is
got-
your side story, your Jenny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get that.
Look at that. Look at that, David.
It's a good story.
Look at
Sorry
that.
about that. Real tangent. I don't think it paid off
That was
as well
a
as I was hoping.
fantastic tangent.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah,
crazy?
I don't
Yeah, no,
think
that
the
was
payoff
good.
was quite
That
there.
was
I'm
good.
sorry, guys.
That was good. It was a good path.
I mean, if it had just ended with like, and it turned out she was a werewolf and the sad clown had to shoot her, like, you know, that's a good
Soggy
button.
bottom. Soggy
Soggy
bottom.
bottom.
So funny. Mr. Soggy
He's
bottom.
only got the one line, right, where he says, like, "This is my associate, Mr. Soggy Bottom," and he goes, "Hello."
Yeah, he doesn't say anything else during the negotiation. Maybe not.
I don't think
Honest
so.
to God, though, if that's not Danny DeVito, do you think this? If it's not Danny DeVito, do you think the studio cuts that whole storyline?
It certainly is an expensive storyline.
You know,
Where
and I
Burton's like, I
remember-
need 3 elephants.
Right.
Like, all this shit.
I remember
Right.
seeing
Popcorn
the
needs to
movie.
freeze in the air.
Yeah.
He needs to be able to push it, though.
It's a good.
With his
That's a good
hands.
visual.
That's a
I
good
like
bit.
that. Yeah.
I remember seeing the movie.
I
with
wish
my-
Alison Lohman had a little more to do.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Wait, who's Alison Lohman?
Young.
She's the young wife.
Got it, got it.
And she mostly just sort of stands there looking pretty.
Right.
And you're kind of like, they really nailed Jessica Lange's hair on
Yeah.
her. Like, they really matched that well.
I remember one of my 8 times seeing this movie, watching it with my father, and when it was that montage of him trying to get the one piece of info a month out of DeVito,
Yeah.
every time they would cut to a different attraction or a different gigantic animal or a different
Right.
giant set, my dad just went, Jesus Christ, how much did they spend on this?
It's kind of
This is a
kind of the thought.
montage, and
Right.
every establishing shot in the montage is like, so they had to rent a tilt-a-whirl?
Sure.
Yeah, we get it. It's a circus.
Yeah, because he's in the motorcycles driving around him in the cage.
Which also, I have to say, my wife is a performer
Sure.
who has done a lot of aerial stuff, and there's a lot of crossover with the circus community.
Mhm.
That is an extraordinarily dangerous thing.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And to stand your leading actor in the middle of it.
Crazy.
Did that real? Do you think that was a real practical thing, or was that?
It looks
I don't
like
know.
it.
It looks like
It certainly
yeah.
doesn't look like fake
Yeah.
at all. Like, I've always that's
Everyone
one of
on
those
set
things
was
where
shitting
I'm
their
like,
pants, right? Everyone on
Yeah.
set was just like,
Yeah.
let's get this shot. Okay. Bikes go. Like,
And
anytime
Tim
I've
Burton's
seen
like, no, we need another take. You couldn't see Helena's reflection in the background.
Because there's also the thing when he's got his head in the lion's mouth, it's
Yeah.
clearly like an animatronic
that's
lion.
a fake lion.
They spent
right.
a lot of money on an animatronic lion. They were
Right.
like, you can stay in the middle of a motorcycle cage, right?
The Place Beyond the Pines has the motorcycle
Yeah.
cage too, and that's just the thing where I'm like, that's not real. That
Simpsons
doesn't happen.
movie.
It stresses me
That's
out.
fucking
Watching
insane.
stuff like that stresses me out.
Like, it's hard to drive a car. Now I'm good at I'm fine at
So
it.
hard that I will never
Right.
do it.
But driving a
I
car
actively avoid
requires your attention, and you are level and going forward.
Yeah, yeah.
Imagine just looking through the eyes of the guy on the motorcycle,
Right.
Who's
Right.
just I'm just not going to see anything except cage.
Yeah.
Just
And as they
round
pass
around
round
each
around.
other, there were 2 in there on
Yeah,
that
there's
one.
2 in there.
Yeah.
One is bad enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that big of ball globe thing.
It basically is it can hold Ewan McGregor
Yeah.
and then 2 motorcycles, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Speaking of would this role be as big if it wasn't DeVito, if you didn't have a name actor who gets, and Danny DeVito billing? I saw the Big Fish musical they did about 10 years after this,
Right.
where John
John
August
Goss, he wrote that as well,
readapted
right?
Because this is well suited to a musical because it's vignette. Any movie that's vignette,
right.
people are like Broadway musical. This is basically just a bunch of songs.
Right.
I
I think the musical made one fatal flaw, which I will say in 1 second, but the Danny DeVito character was weirdly big in the musical.
Sure.
And it stood out when it wasn't played by Danny DeVito.
was he kind of the MC of the musical or something? Would he sort
No,
of
it was just the same thing where that section went on weirdly long.
Did they have a sake bottom?
No.
Great question.
No, I don't think they did.
I'm not seeing a soggy bottom in the credits
I don't
here.
think
Was
they
it on
did.
Broadway?
It was.
You saw it on Broadway.
I saw it on Broadway. One time. Here was the thing.
One time is enough.
Here was the thing I think the musical could have done.
the mounting self-consciousness you feel about how many times you saw it in the theater.
8. A gentleman's 8.
Same theater every time, or
Give me another
were you
hit of
moving
that
around?
thing. I
Oh,
wanna
that's
keep
true. Did
trying.
you test it with different sound systems?
Yeah.
Of course I did. Trying to think where some of the places I saw it. I think I definitely saw Kips Bay at some point.
Kips Bay has a Star Wars VR machine. They have
do.
a whole
They
VR
got
thing.
rid of it.
Oh, they had it.
They used to have the whole IMAX.
They don't have the
basement.
VR.
I forgot the Big Fish
Playground
musical
anymore?
was a flop.
Yes.
I forgot. Wow,
Really?
it played
Yeah.
98 performances. That's a disaster.
Did he win Best Actor?
No,
No. Okay,
it
because
did
who
not
was
get any.
Norman Leo Butts, who's won 17 Tonys.
Norman Leo Butts. Yeah, it
Yeah.
got 0 Tony nominations.
He
it
didn't
was
get
blanked.
nominated?
Blank.
Because he's
Bloodline.
that was the big thing was
Mhm.
he plays.
Wait, what's the name of Mendelssohn's character in Bloodline? Fuck.
I never watched Bloodline.
Because that's, we all know.
Director Orson Krennic.
They're good people, but they did a bad thing.
They did a
we
bad
all
thing.
know
It
that
is
about
fair that
Bloodline.
they did a bad thing.
But
They're good people, but they did a bad
Danny, to me, Bloodline,
Right,
anytime I would
right,
watch
right.
it, it's just everyone's being like, Danny's a problem.
Yeah.
Like the whole move, the
One of
whole
those
show.
families.
Danny, what's
It
he
did
up
make you
to?
feel like you grew up in that town with them, and everybody knew from a young age.
Danny's no good.
Bad egg.
All right, sorry.
The thing I was going to say about the Big Fish musical, you have one guy playing Edward Bloom at all ages.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I know.
Are you pointing at the runtime?
He's
Ben?
pointing at the runtime. We're almost
I mean,
done. We're
it
almost
feels
done.
long to me, and I've been in it.
Yeah.
We're done.
I have nothing left to say about Big
we're going to play
Fish.
the box office game, and that's it. But what do you want to say
I'll
about
say
the
a couple more
musical?
things about it. The thing about the musical. Norman Leo Butts plays Edward Bloom at all ages, so
Yeah.
there's kind of an impressive.
Norbert Leo Butts.
Norbert Leo Butts plays the character at all ages. So there's a skill piece element of like
Right.
you're watching
He's young,
a guy
he's old.
sweat and run and transform
Right.
and go back from the bed and this and that. There was a moment watching it where I went, "Oh fuck, this is what they should have done." The entire first act should have exclusively been Edward telling the stories to his kid in bed, which is kind of how they structure the first act.
Right, because, the movie, yes, that's fair.
And you don't see adult Will at all until Act 2.
Right.
That Act 1 is just, here is...
It's weird that the movie literally starts with old, Crudup being like,
Right.
"You're a fucking fraud," and the wedding speech was too
Right.
long, and you're like, build up to this. I don't get why he's mad.
Because the
Well, they
actor who
can't-
played young Will was a lot less antagonistic in the
Sure.
Broadway musical, but you go, there's an opportunity here to just open with Act 1 is full-on Broadway musical, it's fantabulous stories. Act 2 is when reality crashes
But
down.
isn't the problem then that it's the Princess Bride?
Good
It's
movie.
just the Princess Bride, which
Kind
is
of.
iconic at that point.
Kind of. It's like Princess Bride. It's a little like Into the Woods where you have the second act where like the fantasy falls away.
Because even as you
Right.
just said, him telling young Will, I had a vision of him sick in bed. Like it immediately.
I will
brings it
say
out.
the musical is still mostly that. It's just not
Yeah.
exclusively that. It's
Okay.
mostly the superstructure is him telling the stories to Will as a bedtime story, but then old Will interrupts.
right.
And I was like, save old Will for Act 2. Like keep Act 1 purely in Fantasyland.
Right.
I think would have been cool.
Right.
And then Act 2 comes up and it's a totally different tone.
It's reckoning with.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea.
I thought, yeah, if I were to revive,
The musical.
yes, that's what I would do. The ending of this thing, I mean, there are a couple things it gets at. First of all, Crudup gets out of the way and just delivers this thing clean,
I think he does a great job.
right? And from the moment it just starts tickling in where you're just like, they've set this up so perfectly. The dominoes are perfectly in place. He's kept on saying, I know how I die.
Right.
Tell me the story. And he doesn't know. And you see him start to figure it out. There's so many good Finney performance moments where like, when he tells the story, it adds in the detail about taking the other route because church traffic.
Right.
And they cut to Albert Finney and he's like beaming.
Right.
Because he's like including a superfluous
Completely
detail.
unnecessary
Right.
detail.
He's
Right.
giving coloring to the story now. And then just the fucking idea. I don't know if it's because I'm like a megalomaniac or whatever, but the idea of at the end of your life, you see every person you've ever known
Yeah.
is like the most profound thing in the world.
And
to
they
me.
watch you turn into a fish.
Yeah. I mean, that's the dream, right?
A big fish.
You see everyone you ever knew. You get your lady in the water.
That was the implication, though, that what he saw in the eye was him connecting with his son.
That's how I go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I
They leave
always
it up
took
to you
it.
to decide, right?
Sure, of course, of course.
It wasn't about the story. It was about the stories that bring you together.
Just him saying exactly, and then Albert Finney doing one of the best death pieces of acting I've ever seen, where you literally just see the life
Shocking.
leave his eyes.
shocking.
You're just like,
Absolutely.
we're in the
A
hands of
shocking
one of the
ability to
best
just
to ever
die.
do
Anytime I
it.
see that in a movie, and Albert Finney at this point in his life is probably, what do you think he is? Like,
He's
late
younger than I think he is. He's like
60s,
67, 68.
but still, I would be like, if I'm 67, I'm like, I don't want to.
I don't wanna
do it.
face
I
this.
don't want to face this. Right?
It was creepy, man.
Yeah, he's really good at
His
it.
bed acting's really fucking good throughout the whole
That
movie.
scene where he makes the face when she's not looking at him
Oh.
and he's in pain, and then he's like back to
It's just like heartbreaking shit. But then also when you have the moment where Will starts telling the story and he goes, okay, so it's like this. I wake up, but suddenly everything's different. And they cut to fantasy version of Finney in Will's story, and suddenly it's like Albert Finney with full verve,
Mhm.
and he takes off the thing and goes like, let's get out of here.
Right.
He's just like, that's my fucking guy.
I love him. I love him in this movie. I think it's a great performance.
Should have won the Oscar.
I'd be fine with that.
I think that's like a great Best Supporting Actor winner in a year that was a notably bad Best Supporting Actor field.
Billy Crudup should have won the Nobel Prize.
What, for lack of chemistry. Oh.
And
Anything
it plays
else
out
you
like a
wanna say?
slot machine. It still destroys me.
He loves to say pays out like a slot machine.
It's a thing I read someone say in reference to Shawshank Redemption. I'm like, God, I gotta find an opportunity to say that.
Which is another movie like this where
pays
you're
out like a fucking slot
this
machine.
thing's long, and then at the end you're like, I guess it was kind of worth
You
it.
needed
Like,
to
it all
spend that much
lined
time in
up.
jail.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Pays out like one could say it pays
All
out.
right,
like a
let's
fucking
play the
slot
box office game.
machine. Okay.
Unless there's anything else you want to.
I don't know.
rhapsodize
You
about.
got anything else to say? This movie
I'm-
gets me.
Gethard is spent.
Guys, it's 3:30.
All right. Okay.
I got here at 1. Okay. God, other stuff to do today.
Number one.
I'm officially getting anxious. Because
There's a window, though. Look. There's a window.
There's a
at
window.
least.
Look outdoors, though. It looks into somebody's cubicle. And that guy's not working, by the way.
What is he doing?
He's reading Gmails. Although it's an article. It might be. Who knows? He might be researching.
Oh boy.
So this is the wide weekend.
This is the wide weekend. We've done the initial weekend because
So Sony goosed up the numbers in the early estimates to be able to claim that they got number one, and then when
Yeah,
the
but
estimates came, when the
This
when
is
the actuals
January
came
9th, 2004.
it lost to week 4 of Return of the King.
That's correct.
Right.
This is the
Lord
Return
of the
of the
Rings
King
was running
year.
the table.
I mean, there's no shame in that.
And that's the
no.
year at the Oscars, Return of the King wins everything. Certainly every design.
It wins
visual
the most
effects,
Oscars of any movie
score,
ever. It doesn't
11
lose a single
Oscars.
thing it's nominated for.
Really?
Right.
Yeah.
It just that's when Return of the King just annihilates everything anyway.
Because it was all the goodwill from the...
It's a celebration of.
Exactly.
Right.
It's sort of like you guys did it.
Has Lord of the Rings, and I don't know because I was in college when they came out, has it held up as an institution
Yes.
the way that Star Wars has amongst young people?
I
It
think
has to the extent that it had a prequel trilogy that people didn't even like as much, and it still survived.
I liked those Hobbit movies
Wow.
okay.
Well, when we do Jackson, we got to have you back for one
Yes,
Hobbit.
please.
On Desolation of
Because
Smog.
I kind of have a soft spot for them too, so I would.
You're
love
not
to
into
talk
them.
about
I tapped out after one.
He didn't even see 2 of them. He
Yeah.
only saw the first one,
And
which
I
is
see
probably the weakest
every-
one.
But kids still get into Star Wars, and they're always going to get into Harry Potter. Is Lord
Yeah.
of the Rings the same thing culturally?
I think Lord of the Rings has always played a little bit older.
I
And
think
I
it is,
feel
though.
like you have a lot of people who still every year gotta watch the extended trilogy. Like it's an annual
It's
tradition.
a Christmas tradition for multiple people that I know,
Yeah.
like unconnected people.
I was almost fired from Weird New Jersey because I went to Trilogy Tuesday, which
Yeah.
was when Return of the King came out.
And
You go to
saw
the
all
theater,
3,
watch
right.
all 3.
Right.
My boss was like, "I cannot believe you took the day off of work for that. I will fire you." And he was serious. He's like, "I'll fire you."
Number 3 at the box. Big Fish is number 2, 13.8
okay.
million. Yeah. Number 3 is it's a comedy with probably an actor we all revere. It's one of his low points. A family comedy, but comedian and actor. I feel like
Okay, wait. So 2003
Is it
family
Steve
comedy.
Martin?
It's not Cheaper by the Dozen, is it? It is.
Yeah.
Cheaper by the
Yes.
dozen.
Cheaper
Yes.
by the
He
Dozen.
doesn't have 4 kids.
I'm
He
glad.
has
Look at that.
12
I'm
fucking kids.
I'm glad I got that.
A
that.
wild,
Usually this
runaway
game-
hit.
Usually this game, people just sit and watch you play.
Yeah. No, that was a good ball.
Cheaper by the dozen, huge hit,
Huge hit.
$140 million.
Steve Martin was back.
Does that mark the beginning, or is it just in the early wave of I want to buy a new painting, Steve Martin?
This is when he starts getting
My house is getting a
fancier in his taste.
wing of
Right. Because
paintings.
2003 is Cheaper by the Dozen and Bringing Down the House.
That's right.
And they're both huge hits, and they're both movies that you go, he must have been holding his nose and
There was
just
a
checking eBay.
There's some Picasso for sale that
He was
year.
calling Sotheby's in between takes.
Yeah, yeah. Will you throw in a Basquiat?
Dude loved his paintings. Do you remember that thing a couple years
This will
ago?
pay for 8 banjo tours around the country.
Yeah.
Do you remember that thing a couple years ago where 92nd Street Y was a conversation with Steve Martin?
And then it's just banjo, right?
No, it was just paintings. And people walked out and he kept on being like, I'm sorry, this is what I want
right.
to talk about.
I do remember that.
He was very apologetic. And people were like, tell jokes. And then people were even like, I'd settle for banjo.
You're verbally describing a visual medium. We paid money and we traveled all the way up here. It's so shockingly hard to get to.
People
Or was it
drove
when they
from
started the
Nyasset.
Tribeca? Was it at Tribeca?
No, it was the real 92nd.
Oh, it's hard to get to.
Yeah.
Have
People
you
were
guys,
coming
have
in
you ever
from Mount
interacted with
Kisco.
Steve Martin, Chris?
No.
Yeah.
He is I feel like of my big Mount Rushmore idols, the only one I haven't met.
I will say too, for all the jokes we made, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is probably, I think it's my second favorite movie. Outside of like
it's
the
a
Star
pretty
Wars
perfect
stuff.
movie.
And you've said, I mean, it
It's
features.
gross. My favorite comedies are Gross Point Blank and
Wow.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
You have said before in this podcast, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles features your wife's favorite actor
Yeah,
of all time.
That dog who got frozed up. She recently.
It's number one.
That dog who got
Hallie's
froze up in the back of the
one.
pickup truck.
Hallie
My
Bullitt
wife
respects no actor more
when you
than
think
that
about
dog.
it, though, that's a dog in the cold, and he nailed the timing on that hard. And he's up against Steve Martin and John Candy. This is intimidating. She recently
Griffin.
declared her second favorite actor. Should I
Please, big reveal. This is a scoop.
guy who plays Thurman Merman in Bad Santa?
Great call.
I just saw that for the first time.
Oh, that's a real Gethard movie.
That is, I mean, that's up there. I immediately was
movie.
like, oh, that's number 3.
It's sort of a
Grosse
weird,
Pointe-
forgotten movie because it was a hit at the time. People
Yeah.
liked it, but it kind of
I
just
couldn't
went
believe.
away.
I always thought it was just Elf. Just like I always thought of that and Elf
Yeah.
as like very
no, it's
similar.
like a very dark movie.
Oh
It's quite a
my
dark
god,
movie.
it
And
makes me
Thornton's-
laugh.
It's from the
great
director of
in it.
Crumb.
and
When
Ghost World.
Yeah.
when he hands him his report card and Billy Bob Thornton looks at it and he's like, Thurman, who the fuck is Thurman? Are you Thurman? And you realize he doesn't even ask this kid his name until we're like a solid 75 minutes into this movie. That is such a funny joke, man. He didn't even, you're like, he's been living in his house for the bulk of this movie. And they insinuate it's been for weeks, maybe. And he just now is like, wait, what's your name? He didn't even ask him his name. Thurman, man.
So Hallie Bullitt's Heat, her like De Niro, Pacino together for the first time would be the dog and Thurman Merman.
Yeah.
If you could get a two-hander with that
That
dog, and Thurman Merman.
Who is that dog? He's like James Dean. He did it very little. He went away.
He left us wanting more.
Watch that scene now.
That's a great scene. I know. I can conjure the image of the
Watch
dog
the
right
timing.
away.
Watch the comedic timing on that scene. And some of it's the camera cut, sure. But the dog carries his weight. And you don't expect the dog to have his mouth all frozen up like that. And he keeps a straight face. He deadpans it hard. And he's not, doesn't look like he's just looking for the treat. He looks like he's looking for the moment.
He was in it. He was in the moment.
He's all frozen up.
Speaking of frozed,
Oh,
number 4,
Come on.
that's.
Come on,
I mean,
Griff.
it's plugged in across the. Okay.
Griff.
Keep this
girlfriend's calling.
It's someone who assumes we wouldn't still be taping at this point.
She is sorely mistaken. Number 4 is a cold movie.
Cold?
It's got cold in the
Cold
title.
Mountain?
Brr. Yes,
Cold Mountain.
Cold Mountain. You
Cold
seen
Mountain.
Cold Mountain?
Never
Civil
saw it.
War,
Didn't see it.
Homeric epic.
Another big like this is going to run the table at the Oscars, and then
And
it
the
kind
Oscars
of
kind of
out,
snubbed it.
other than supporting actor.
They did give Renee Zellweger her
Yeah.
Oscar. That's right. Weird movie. I actually kind of like it. It's got this great scene where you got those, you know, that Southern revival sort of thing where they sing these songs and they use their voices as instruments, and it requires like many people to have any impact.
Uh-huh.
Where like they're all just sort of making like percussive sounds with their mouth. Fucking love that shit.
I made the argument on Twitter recently.
Wait,
that
that's in Cold Mountain or that's the other movie?
There's like a big scene in Cold Mountain where they're all singing like
I was trying to
That
guess
was
a
his
movie
hint for
based
number
on
5.
that. Yeah.
Number 5 is Something's Gotta Give. Is the movie.
Oh, okay.
That just,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
the Nancy Myers classic.
Yeah.
With Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, so I have a big question, I guess, sort of in summation. Everything and this has been a wide-ranging episode. We've gone deep into a bunch of different
I
little.
think we did a great job.
Yeah, we've taken a couple of stops at different towns at the side of the road, right? My question is, as you said, you will soon be a father
Yeah.
for the first time.
Yes.
You're looking forward to sharing Star Wars with your son,
Yeah.
as you said. Now, do you feel like for you, the original trilogy is the thing? You want to introduce him to that? Or do you want to lead for your son with Kit Fisto? Because if you start at episode 4, you're
gonna take a
depriving
while.
him of Fisto.
God damn. You just called into question everything that I know about.
You thought this podcast was done. We had nothing left to say. And I asked you the existential question of your life.
Look.
Do you want your son to meet Kit Fisto or Luke Skywalker first? That is the question.
I guess I just fear that if I hold back Fisto for my son, and then he comes to realize at some point that Fisto was there the whole time, he's going to view me like Crudup viewed Albert Finney.
It all ties together. That's what the movie's about. It's about making the decisions as a father. What kind of world you want to raise your son in.
You know, if he reviews it that way, it means he'll have some trouble, but he'll come around. He'll figure it out. He'll realize what a great man you were eventually.
Is he gonna put his emphasis on weird syllable stuff? What if you had a kid and the kid talked like Billy Crudup and Big Fish?
I'd be like, I fucked up with this kid.
How bad would you react if you had a son someday, Griffin, and he looked at you, if you're eating dinner and he's just like, hey, Dad, can you pass the salt? You'd be like,
Dad,
stop
these
that shit.
stories that you're telling all the time, don't you feel like, because this was the period where he was the MasterCard priceless guy, and that was so much of his job was just like listing things with atypical rhythms,
Right.
that he just got so caught up in that game.
Because there's literally, what can you say about a credit card?
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know, it's sort of like
Gallon of
any
milk
beer advertisement where it's like,
25.
it's the same product as before.
Right.
It's, you remember what a credit card is? It's
Right.
that. That's what we got.
And he just had
it's a
to
fucking
keep
credit card.
doing those spots over and over again. Maybe that ruined Billy Crudup at this period of his
Now,
career.
I've just rewatched Almost Famous, and he's pretty good.
He's
in
very
that.
good.
Great in that.
He's really good.
He's very good in that.
What else has he done? What else am I not thinking of?
Left Mary Louise Parker 8 months pregnant. That was a big career move for him.
That's true, famously.
Yeah.
You know, he was in this movie called Waking the Dead, which he's quite good in. He was in this movie called
Jesus'
Jesus' Son, which he was sort of like seen as like an up and coming
Right.
marquee idol.
But
Like
then-
where it's like, this guy's handsome, he's a good actor, he's got all the tools, like he's
Yeah,
going to be
watch
big.
But then
Watchable.
Almost Famous was like his first big studio bite at the apple, and then this is kind of like the next one.
And that's it.
yeah.
But also people so truly despise him for the Mary Louise Parker thing that his
Yeah.
name is mud in Hollywood.
Right.
And he just becomes a character
Yeah.
actor
He left his longtime girlfriend 8 months pregnant,
Yeah. for Claire Danes.
which was just seen as like such a despicable move.
Even in Hollywood, people were like, no,
Yeah.
you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, then by the time he's in Mission Impossible 3, which is only 2 years later,
Right.
or 3 years later,
He's kind of the pill.
he's the pill and he's like a fucking character actor.
Yeah.
And like only a couple years after that, he's Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen.
Yeah.
Right.
Where
right.
it's like, this guy, he's like, fine, I'll play the mocap thing. Like, I don't give a shit.
I
Don't even have my face.
Said it 1,000 times. I still think he would be my ideal Doctor Doom casting.
Billy Crudup.
That's
Everything.
You've said that
That's
a
fucking
1,000
insane.
I've
times.
said it 1,000 times. I'll say 1,000 more.
I didn't-
Everything.
You've never said that to me, I think.
I have definitely said that to you.
In what world
That's
do you need to
crazy.
say that 1,000 times? Who's listening to you say that?
No one's
Unfortunately-
listening, but I'm saying it.
Several
Why does
people
Billy
listen.
Crudup make the
I'll
best?
tell you why. Everything that's irritating about him in Big Fish is what makes him a good Doctor Doom.
No
But
way.
he's
Dr.
a
Doom.
weasel.
Dr. Doom is a strong.
Yes. Dr. Doom's a king.
Outside of Magneto, maybe the most justification for villainy in the Marvel
I
universe.
think he can do that, but the key to Doctor Doom is that he's just driven by petty rage of the fact that he thinks he should be like the leading man.
Right, but he needs charisma. He needs to command a room.
He can do it.
That needs to be like Christoph Waltz
Well, that's a little too obvious.
because of the
Christoph Waltz.
accent.
Yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
that he's played like every fucking villain that exists at this point. But sure.
I think Victor Von Doom has to be a failed heartthrob who's angry that he's not like a superhero, you know?
I don't know about that. He's an ice cold sociopath from the day he enters college, akin to next to Reed Richards.
Because he's like assuming like, well, I'm the golden boy, right?
Ultimately, though, what's fueling Dr. Doom
Yeah.
is that his mom has been captured. His mom's soul has been captured by Mephisto.
Right.
That's true.
Have you ever read the
Give up.
Doctor Doom, Doctor Strange crossover?
No.
It was notoriously hard to find when I was a kid. They have it on Marvel Unlimited, though.
Mhm.
It is awesome.
Really?
It's all about Doctor Doom's. Doctor Doom also deals with magic and the mystic
Right.
arts.
Well, because his
course.
mother was a gypsy,
Yeah.
discredited by his father,
Mm-hmm.
and he's kind of
It's incredible.
shamefully pursuing magic.
Well worth
Right,
reading.
Yeah.
Well worth reading.
I want to read it. I'm doing this thing where I read Marvel Comics year by year right
Oh,
now
year by
on the
year.
Unlimited app.
Do you pick one series, or do you have a number of series that you're reading as if you're a kid
Ta-
picking them all up each
Take
month?
a guess.
Ooh,
Exactly.
that
This
sounds
guy,
fun.
take a guess which one.
Like, I'm
he's
not
doing.
going to read
Ooh.
every, like, you'll learn, like, I'm in the 70s now where it's like some things like, okay, I don't need to read this. Like, you know, I don't need to read some failed, you know, but right now, through the entire 60s, there's really only 12 Marvel titles.
So you're trying to live the experience of being a Marvel fan.
That's exactly what I'm trying
so
to
you're
do.
reading like Journey into Mystery.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is it
Tales
good?
to Astonish. Yeah.
Wow.
All that shit. The 60s is great. It's pretty unbeatable.
Yeah.
You know, and you can see the heroes that are hitting better,
Right.
and you can see the ones that aren't, and
You
like
feel
their
something
villains kind of
special
suck,
happening.
you know, and like you can see, you know, in the early 60s where they're like, Ant-Man is one of the core heroes,
Yeah.
and then slowly they're like, yeah, Ant-Man's not that big a deal anymore, and then Ant-Man's just gone, he's in the Avengers, but that's it.
And then they
And
make him like
sometimes.
an abusive.
Well,
like, asshole.
I haven't
Right,
gotten
yeah.
to that yet. But
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
Namor. They're like Namor is crucial, and then they're
I
like,
love
fucking
Namor.
no one likes Namor. I guess Namor's gone, and you see him get bumped from the front. He's like he splits the title with someone else, then he gets bumped to the back, and then he's just gone.
Namor's so cool.
Namor's
I
great.
always
Love
liked
Namor.
Yeah.
Love
Always
Namor.
liked him.
But his solo titles are no fun. It's boring.
No,
There
but
was one
he's
in the
great
90s that I
as
thought was okay.
Fantastic Four ensemble.
Him
Yeah.
dropping into the Avengers or whatever, or
Yeah.
Fantastic Four is great. But him going down to Atlantis, like the other Namor characters,
Are
not
they
as
doing a
interesting.
Namor now?
They talk about it,
Because
but
it
who
seems like a
knows?
no-brainer with
Yeah.
with climate change, global warming.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Aquaman kind of was.
Yeah. I didn't see it. I wanted to see it, but I could not convince Hallie on that.
Ben, you want to give it a quick review?
Ben is
Fucking
vaping.
rules.
Ben is vaping.
Yeah, I was vaping.
It's good?
Yeah, I loved it. It's awesome.
I gotta watch
It's
it.
like such a fun movie.
You know where I'm gonna watch Aquaman?
On a plane?
Of course. As soon as I saw the trailer, again, Hallie Bullitt. We watched the trailer, and Hallie Bullitt just went, "Don't even ask. Don't even ask." Come on. I was
Here,
like,
this will whet your appetite, Chris. It's got a lot of sea crime.
I gotta go home, guys.
Okay.
That's it. That's it. We're
Chris,
done. We're done.
New book, Lose
We were
Well.
talking comics all of a
Came out in
sudden,
October, Who cares?
What do you mean? Hey, come
About
on.
the new book.
New
Yeah.
book.
It's all okay.
But
pretty
let's
good.
give it that BC bump.
I would love that.
We'll sell 30
Um,
more copies.
You got your podcast?
Yeah, Beautiful Anonymous.
Yeah.
I got some moves I'm making coming up that I think you guys that either represent a severe career downfall or are the coolest thing I could possibly be doing in 2019. That I want to talk to you guys about
Okay.
off mic.
Okay, so
Turn
let's
the-
end this episode
turn the mics
immediately.
off.
Let's
Thank you all for
just
listening.
say that I used to think I could make a better TV show than some other people, and now I think I could make a better TV network than other people.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Thanks to Andrew Godot for our social media, Lee Montgomery for our theme song, Joe Bone and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Go to blankies.red.com for some real nerdy shit. Go to TeePublic for some real nerdy shirts. And as always, let's end the episode so we can hear this.